Nangong Luyan made the prompt decision, pulling Su Luo to follow closely behind the ginseng baby. The rest, seeing this, also caught up, one after another. Behind the coffin, there was a small piece of earth that wasn't corroded by the black air. Up ahead of this place was a slightly high stone altar. 2 double-edged swords were inserted into the stone altar. A double-edged blue sword with dazzling brilliance. A double-edged black sword that was so dark it lacked light. Don't know how long these 2 double-edged swords had existed. And like that coffin, its entire body emitted an ancient aged aura. At the moment, the little ginseng baby stood in that place, pointing at the 2 double-edged swords up ahead. He said to Su Luo, "Dg Bochi Lei, Zo Koi Ba." What? Bei Chening now directly took Su Luo as the official translator. Every time little ginseng baby said a sentence, he would then ask about the sentence. He said to pull out these 2 double-edged swords, then we'll be fine. Su Luo smilingly said, "Just this simple?" Bei Chening still didn't believe it. He took a step to directly pull out the double-edged swords. Since it's like this, then I'll keep trying everything in a desperate situation, and give it a try. Chapter 1139, The Underground Tomb 7, Bei Chening, without saying anything more, directly went up to pull out the double-edged sword. That double-edged blue sword clearly wasn't an ordinary item. Bei Chening's heart had some restraining fear, therefore. He first went to pull out that long black sword. However, just as Bei Chening extended his hand, when it was a thumb's distance away from that long black sword, suddenly the surroundings around the long black sword had an odd, faint fluctuation, blocking Bei Chening from getting near it. Bei Chening didn't believe it. He condensed his whole body's spirit force into the hollow of his right palm. Bit by bit, his palm slowly reached towards that long black sword hilt. At the moment, Bei Chening's fair face was covered with sweat, both eyes scarlet red. Very clearly, he had already exhausted all his strength. Afterwards, he finally touched the long black sword's hilt. However, an unforeseen event suddenly happened at this moment. One only saw Bei Chening's body seem to have suffered a heavy hit. He trembled violently, and then a loud bang sounded. Bei Chening's body suddenly flew backwards and heavily smashed against the coffin, sending out an intense hitting sound. He directly spat out a mouthful of blood while covering his chest, coughing continuously. Inside the great hall, everyone's gazes carried astonishment, uniformly gazing at those 2 ancient swords in the stone altar. A very hard to deal with attacking power. Sitaming said, stunned. Just now, when Bei Chening was sent flying from the jolt, at the same time, they also felt a powerful rebound force. Only because they didn't face the force head-on, therefore, they were barely able to withstand it. These 2 swords were definitely not ordinary. Very possibly they were exceptionally famous swords. But their attack power were terrible. After Bei Chening was sent flying, Ziyan anxiously ran over. With a deeply concerned face she said, "Bei Chen, how are you? Are you alright?" Helped up by Ziyan, Bei Chening's face carried a trace of shock. This sword is very strange, it actually can launch an attack on its own. Su Luo, seeing he was seriously injured, gave him a pill that treated internal injuries. After Bei Chening swallowed it, he sat in place to meditate. At this moment, Nangong Liuyun's gaze gradually became heavy. His pair of eyes stared at those 2 swords in the stone altar. Suddenly, brilliant lights and vibrant colors flashed through his gaze. What's going on? Su Luo saw that his expression was different, and walked up to his side to inquire in a low voice. If I didn't guess wrong, those 2 double-edged swords ought to be the Qi Xiao sword and Cheng Ying sword from Legends. Nangong Liuyun's eyes were like bright stars, glistening and dazzling. Qi Xiao sword and Cheng Ying sword. Li Yaoyao, having heard what was said, exclaimed in surprise. These 2 swords had continuously been passed on in legends, practically buried in the long river of history. But now, they had unexpectedly appeared here? Qi Xiao sword and Cheng Ying sword? Are they very well known? Su Luo expressed her puzzlement. What only famous they're simply so well known, like thunder piercing the ear. Only you, this kind of ignorant person of talent, hasn't heard of them. Li Yaoyao stared at Su Luo with disdain. It is said that 5,000 years ago, there was a married couple that seemingly came from out of nowhere. They each had an exceptionally famous sword. Together, they challenged the sects all over the entire world. simply battling until they were unrivaled. Those exceptional swords were precisely Qi Xiao sword and Cheng Ying sword. Su Luo cast her an indifferent glance, unconcerned. The corner of Li Yaoyao's mouth rose from being immensely proud of herself. At that time, I and third senior brother read this story together. Ah, don't believe me? Asked third senior brother. Su Luo was unruffled, she was all smiles. It seemed to her that the present Li Yaoyao was too childish. Simply like a clown jumping up and down, Su Luo really was too lazy to pay any attention to her. Li Yaoyao took a few steps forward, carefully sizing up those two double-edged swords. It is said that the Qi Xiao sword is about 71 centimeters long. The hilt is made of red jade from the deep seas. The sword blade is engraved with a complicated dragon pattern. Chapter 1140. The Underground Tomb, 8. She once again continued to speak. Cheng Ying's sword is 59 centimeters long. The sword hilt is made with white jade from the snowy mountains. The sword blade is engraved with a complicated phoenix pattern. These two double-edged swords. These two swords, although they seemed simple, unadorned, and old-fashioned, however, all traits matched with what Li Yaorao had said. Indeed, they are Qi Xiao sword and the Cheng Ying sword. Nangong Liuyun's voice was very mild, but since he said it, then there was a 100% certainty. Having gotten a sentence of confirmation from Nangong Liuyun, Li Yaoyao became increasingly proud of herself, and she coldly snorted at Su Luo. You don't even know such simple historical knowledge. Don't you feel inferior? What qualifications do you have to stand by third senior brother's side? Nangong Liuyun's gaze was like the cold moon, slanting a harsh glance at Li Yaoyao. Although Li Yaoyao was silent, she still couldn't accept this. Nangong Liuyun's expression was apathetic, his tone rightfully cold. Since everyone came here together, everyone has a share in this Qi Xiao sword and Cheng Ying sword. Being swept over by his gaze, Luo Haochen's heart trembled, but he hurriedly squeezed out a smile. What His Highness Prince Jin says goes. Nangong Liuyun's gaze was ice-cold, as if he hadn't heard the praise. Then, once again he said a sentence indifferently. However, there are only two swords, therefore, everyone each has to rely on their ability. Who has the ability to pull out these two swords, will get to take them. Finished speaking, he crossed his arms, indifferently leaning against a column at the side, his eyes sweeping over everyone. Everyone's expression was all different. Luo Haochen, pleasantly surprised, gazed at that dark without light Qi Xiao sword. Once the Qi Xiao sword appeared, who wouldn't strive for it? The attractiveness of this sword, for Luo Haochen, was greater than any treasure. Moreover, Qi Xiao's sword recognizing its master depended on destiny, not necessarily based on ability. Good, I endorse this. Luo Haochen was the first to agree. Luo Die's entire attention was already attracted away by that Cheng Ying sword. Seeing her older brother agree, she also hurriedly nodded. In this group, no one could deny that all of them combined couldn't compare to half of Nangong Liuyun. If Nangong Liuyun decided to completely and unreasonably expropriate these two swords for himself, they could only watch on helplessly. Now, since he had given everyone a fair chance, then whoever didn't seize it was a fool. Situ Ming and Li Yaoyao also agreed immediately after. Su Luo voluntarily took a step back. Standing by Nangong Liuyun's side, she faintly smiled. Now whoever is interested, then hurry and go up, okay? There are already more and more of this black air. Apart from this area of 3 square meters they were in, the entire great hall had already been enveloped by the black air. The entire hall appeared pitch black as ink, like the night. In any case, the black air can't come into this area of ours. Why on earth do you care? Li Yaoyao glared at Su Luo. However, very quickly, Li Yaoyao was slapped in the face. Ah, that black air unexpectedly. Luo Die covered her mouth in astonishment, her eyes opened very wide. That black air originally diffused in the air like smoke, but now it actually assembled into a rope. Moreover, it was still continuously condensing. Su Luo's complexion slightly changed. This is about to condense into a pillar. Although a rope couldn't break in, however, if it formed a pillar, the safe protected place they were in, sooner or later, would be broken through from the impact. When the time came, everyone would lose their life under this black air. Pull out the sword. Nangong Liuyun's expression was indifferent. voice calm like a towering mountain. He made the fretful hearts of people calm down very quickly. Second senior brother. Li Yaoyao pushed Situming a bit. She wanted that Cheng sword. Before Situming could react, Luo Haochen already took a step forward. I'll go first. Chapter 1141. The Underground Tomb 9. Even though there was Bei Qinying's mistakes from before to learn from, Luo Haochen feared Situming could pull out the Qi Shao sword. So he clenched his teeth and then stepped forward. Nangong Liuyun's indifferent gaze swept over him, with a rightfully cold expression that was profoundly mysterious. Luo Haochen sucked in a deep breath and concentrated all of his spirit force into his right palm. That spirit power in his right palm whizzed out and gave rise to a burst of subtle fluctuation. Luo Haochen wasn't careless. His gaze unwaveringly stared at that Qi Shao sword, controlling the rhythm of his breathing. He slowly walked up, step by step. He very carefully extended out his right palm, his fingers making complicate seals. The restricting ripples around Qi Shao sword unexpectedly dispersed to either sides, showing a very small, thin crack. Luo Haochen greatly rejoiced in his heart. Didn't expect that his family's secret seals that was passed on was actually able to open the restricting ripples. Although it was merely a very small, thin crack, but for him it was enough. Luo Haochen's right palm extended towards that Qi Shao sword, inch by inch. Finally, he tightly grasped the Qi Shao sword hilt. Older brother is excellent. Luo Jie's eyes were opened wide. Seeing Luo Haochen so easily grab onto the sword hilt, Luo Jie happily cheered, loudly clapping with one hand. That appearance of jumping up and down seemed as if Luo Haochen had already succeeded in getting the Qi Shao sword. Li Yaoyao unhappily gave a cold snort. Still hasn't gotten hold of it, careful of being happy in vain. Li Yaoyao was still holding the grudge from the last challenge when the Luo siblings didn't support her. Luo Jie proudly cast a glance at Li Yaoyao. You just continue to be jealous, oh, too lazy to pay any attention to you. She turned her head around, waving her fist excitedly and encouraged in a loud voice. Older brother is the most wonderful. She even thought that after her older brother pulled out this Qi Shao sword, he would help her again to pull out the Cheng sword. At this moment, the gazes of everyone present all uniformly gathered on Luo Haochen's body. Luo Haochen's eyes were tightly closed. The outside noises and sounds didn't seem to have any effect on him. He held his breath with rapt attention, poured all of his spirit force into his 5 fingers that grasped the sword hilt. Suddenly, his eyes opened as if ignited, and he loudly shouted, "Up!" Just at this moment, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. When everyone once again opened their eyes from blinking, that Qi Shao sword still remained motionless in its original place. However, Luo Haochen's figure had already disappeared. So, it turned out that when Luo Haochen had loudly shouted, the Qi Shao sword wasn't pulled up by him. On the contrary, he himself was directly sent flying by the vibrations. Fortunately, Bei Qinying had prepared earlier. He had already retreated to one side in advance. Otherwise, he would have been the one knocked over by Luo Haochen. Luo Haochen, like Bei Qinying, had his body heavily smashed on the coffin's stone wall. His bones issued bursts of crisp noises. Older brother Luo Jie cried out in alarm and ran up while loudly shouting. Li Yaoyao coldly said, "I said he wouldn't be able to do it." Luo Jie used hostile eyes to glare at Li Yaoyao. "There isn't much time, Situming, you come." Nangong Luyan directly commanded. Situming originally wanted to modestly decline, but thought of Nangong Liuyun's abnormal strength. If he let Nangong Luyan go first, then he wouldn't have any chance of getting it. Thinking up to here, Situming nodded his head. Okay, second senior brother will take this small advantage over you. Situming took a deep breath and walked over to the Qi Shao sword. Li Yaoyao's facial features subsequently changed. Second senior brother. Li Yaoyao's tone carried a trace of anger and threat. Hadn't she already hinted to second senior brother to help her get the Cheng sword? How could second senior brother be so selfish? Situming apologetically nodded his head towards Li Yaoyao. Yet his footsteps were as steady as before as he walked towards the Qi Shao sword. Chapter 1142. The Underground Tomb 10. Qi Shao sword was a man's sword. If one could get hold of it, then in the 9th challenge, he would have even more confidence in being able to protect Li Yaoyao. However, Li Yaoyao completely didn't understand his painstaking effort. Instead, she ruthlessly cursed him in her heart. When Situming grasped Qi Shao sword's hilt, Li Yaoyao's pair of eyes nervously stared at him, as she muttered to herself, "Don't pull it up, don't pull it up, don't pull it up." Her voice was very soft. Situming, with all of his attention on the Qi Shao sword, didn't hear it. If he had heard it, quite possibly, he would directly spit out a mouthful of blood onto the Qi Shao sword. However, Su Luo, who was standing beside Li Yaoyao, had heard everything clearly. She glanced at Li Yaoyao in disbelief. Nangong Luyan also silently shook his head. This sword ought to be third senior brother's. Li Yaoyao ferociously glared at Su Luo. Cheng sword ought to be mine. Su Luo, with sympathy filling her eyes, glanced at Situming. Li Yaoyao, you'll go to hell after you die. Situming was so good to her. If Li Yaoyao wanted Situming's heart now, he would absolutely do the job himself. With one stab he would dig out the piping hot heart to personally give it to Li Yaoyao. However, Situming was so dead set on her, and she would still criticize him so harshly like this. It really was. Su Luo didn't know what she should say about her. Only you, the kind that robbed someone of something they cherish, will go to hell after death. Li Yaoyao glowered at Su Luo. If not for you, how could third senior brother change his affection to love another? Nangong Liuyun's thick sharp eyebrows nodded slightly. With one move he pulled Su Luo into his embrace, and muttered to her. Don't lower yourself to a madman's level, so as not to lower your status. Okay. Su Luo contentedly leaned against his shoulders and smiled brilliantly at Li Yaoyao, freely and relaxedly said, I'll listen to you, not going to lower myself to a madman's level. Madman? Li Yaoyao, hearing these words, only felt all of the blood in her body momentarily freeze into millennium-old frost. She was constantly thinking of everything to do for third senior brother, but in his eyes, she was actually a madman? Li Yaoyao's footsteps staggered. She almost tumbled to the ground. Her eyes were blank, with a lifeless expression. She stood there dim-wittedly, not much different from a madman. At this moment, Situming's try at pulling up the sword was already at the end. Up! Situming exploded out in a loud shout. Suddenly, a powerful force burst out towards Situming's body. This force had astonishing destructive power. It exploded towards Situming's 4 limbs and hundreds of bones. Everyone stood close together. They could clearly hear the cracking sound of bones displacing coming from Situming's body. Situming's complexion swelled red, wisps of blood springing up in his pair of eyes. It could clearly be seen that he had used up all of his strength. Regardless of how much that force collided around, his legs were solid as a boulder all along, motionless, as if they were fixed in place. Ziyan said in a low voice. Second senior brother's strength turned out to already so high to such an extent. It seems that this Qi Shao sword will belong to him. From the several challenges before, he didn't display his highest level of powers. Su Luo shook her head. I don't see it like this. Ziyan asked in surprise. You mean that he won't be able to take away this sword? Su Luo shallowly smiled. The Qi Shao sword's haughtiness soared to the sky, cruel and untamed. Situming used warm water to cook a frog method to tame it. How would he possibly tame it? You wait and see. In less than 1 stick of incense's time he will certainly give up. It wasn't because Su Luo's vision was very good. Rather, this was the evaluation of the little stone in her space. There was no need to doubt the little stone's vision. Chapter 1143, The Underground Tomb, 11. Situming did hear Su Luo's words. In fact, he also wanted to change to a more intense way to tame it, but his strength was clearly not enough. As Su Luo had anticipated, no more than a while later, Situming's face overflowed with cold sweat. It rolled and landed on the ground. Perspiration soaked through his chest and back. Situming could feel his own body's functions gradually decline, spirit force gradually becoming less, but this Qi Shao sword he actually, like a wildly rushing feral leopard, the more he rushed, the braver it was. Poochie! A smear of blood overflowed from the corner of Situming's mouth. Immediately afterwards, he started to vomit out large mouthfuls of blood one after another. In the end, Situ Ming could not hold on, just like the two people before him, was directly flicked flying. Bang! A heavy sound echoed. Situ Ming was ferociously knocked against that coffin's stone wall with both internal and external injuries. His luck wasn't good, he was directly knocked out from that impact. Li Yaoyao stood in place, she wanted to go over, but was also somewhat hesitant. Su Luo was speechless. Li Yaoyao was a super version of an ingrate that you couldn't raise to maturity. Su Luo was also too lazy to deal with her. She bumped Nangong Liuyun's arm. With a smile that was full of deep meaning said, "Quickly go accept the object that suits you." Nangong Liuyun was not a good kind of person. On the contrary, if talking about two-faced and cunning, simply no one could scheme better than him. Su Luo knew the reason why he wanted Luo Haochen and them to be at the front. He certainly had his own reasons. Nangong Liuyun robbed Su Luo's head in annoyance. "Stand a bit further, so as not to suffer any side effects." "Okay, you should rest assured, I will carefully look after myself. If not, I still have little divine dragon and them to help." Although Su Luo's body was sickly, however, the troops guarding her were very formidable. Nangong Liuyun nodded his head, handing Su Luo over to Ziyan. Afterwards he walked towards that Qi Shao sword, as if on a leisurely stroll in the main hall. That Qi Shao sword's hilt, they had spent a countless amount of mental and physical strength before being able to hold it. But now, Nangong Liuyun only extended his hand, couldn't see how he exerted himself, and his 5 fingers had already gripped the hilt. Just that easily. Luo Haochen's eyes unblinkingly paid attention to Nangong Liuyun's every movement. His eyes betrayed an amazed expression. Just now he had personally tried it, so he knew how strong that prohibition ripple was. It was simply like the gale and large waves on the ocean surface, world-shaking. He also used a hand seal secretly passed on in the family before being able to grip that hilt. In the end, to what formidable degree was Nangong Liuyun's strength? Now gaze after gaze, all congregated on Nangong Liuyun's body. Under these gazes that watched attentively, Nangong Liuyun's finger tightened slightly. Directly after, his expression became slightly grave, because he could clearly feel that explosive ferocious strength, like a huge majestic dragon, suddenly rushing towards his body, as if rushing into his 4 limbs and hundreds of bones. Such a strong fighting desire. A majestic, imposing manner with a touch of firmness and violence from antiquity, severely berserk, as if it was the strongest palm strike on earth. Bang! Nangong Liuyun abruptly smashed a palm strike towards that Qi Shao sword. Immediately after, bang, bang, bang. Nangong Liuyun smashed one fist after another, heavily smashing towards that Qi Shao sword. It was as if that was his greatest enemy, showing no quarter. In succession, it seemed as if he sent out 7,790 strikes. Each of the strikes weighed more than 500 kilograms. Speaking of this, it also seemed strange. That Qi Shao sword in the beginning was like a furious large dragon, bravely battling, cruel, arrogant and untamable. As if it wouldn't obey anyone, however, under Nangong Liuyun's raindrops-like fist strikes, this Qi Shao sword seemed to give off a buzzing crying sound. That sound seemed to be sobbing, mournful and at the same time, seemed to be pleading. Message from the author. The little black room locked up too many words. Only now did I crawl out. Chapter 1144. Cheng Ying Sword 1. Under everyone's amazed gazes, with a shake of Nangong Liuyun's hand, he actually easily held that Qi Shao sword in his hand. Excellent sword. Nangong Liuyun grasped the sword with his right hand. His left hand's forefinger and middle finger were placed together, and slid across the sword blade. The places where his fingertips slid past, this Qi Shao sword, that was originally dark and without light, seemed to have been ignited in that split second. Specks of divine light seemed to converge together, circulating like light and shadows. Its brilliance was dazzling, making people's eyes become obsessed. Everyone was attracted by this sword until they became intoxicated, as if their souls were all pulled in. "Ha!" Nangong Liuyun cried out in a low tone. "What's wrong?" Su Luo curiously asked. "This sword, can it be of the lightning attribute?" Beichening gathered close. His eyes were full of amazement, as he clicked his tongue in wonder, because just now, He seemed to have seen a lightning dragon serpent streak across the blade of the sword. It really is of the lightning attribute. Nangong Luyan went through 2 martial arts moves with it and nodded his head with certainty. Second brother, congratulations ah. You finally got what you wished for. Beichening was very happy. Yes. Nangong Liuyun's expression was unperturbed and unruffled. However, that slightly raised sharp eyebrow leaked his inner state of mind. Nangong Liuyun's current mood was indeed not too bad. In fact, up until now he was always searching for a weapon with the lightning attribute. However, looking here and there, he wasn't able to find a weapon that fit him. It went without saying that weapons with lightning attributes were very rare. The higher-leveled ones were even rarer. To get one really depended on one's luck. Luo girl, you made the greatest contribution. Nangong Luyan smiled lovingly at Su Luo. How could it be? I didn't contribute any strength. I purely stood by and watched. Su Luo repeatedly waved her hand. Nangong Luyan merely tapped her forehead. If it was not because of you, why would I come to this 9 different palace halls? Moreover, why would I choose the death grade? Nangong Luyan even suspected that if Su Luo wasn't present, whether in this 8th challenge, these 2 swords would still be placed here. He always had a feeling that Su Luo's background was very odd. So odd as to be strange. Okay, since you insist on foisting off the credit to me, then I'll accept it reluctantly. Su Luo smiled until her eyes squinted. A model of having picked up a small advantage and flaunting how modest one was. Since you picked up the Qi Xiao sword, then that Cheng Ying. Before Su Luo finished speaking, Li Yaoyao repeatedly sneered. You still want that Cheng Ying sword? I'm going to tell you, that Cheng Ying sword is mine. Su Luo's cold eyes cast her a sidelong glance. Oh? The Jade Lake's fairy had this kind of self-confidence? Li Yaoyao gave a cold sneer. Su Luo, based on your current appearance of needing assistance to even stand, you think you are even worthy enough to vie for it with me? Your face is really thick-skinned. Su Luo smiled shallowly. Who dares to compare how thick-skinned their face is in front of the Jade Lake's fairy? Isn't this looking for their own oppression? Ziyan stood completely on Su Luo's side, with both hands at her hips, and tauntingly cast a glance at Li Yaoyao. Yeah right, based on you who had lost a hand, also dare to boast shamelessly about wanting this Cheng Ying sword? Do you feel no shame? Li Yaoyao's entire face was full of rage, and gave an angry snort. Fine, let's see who this Cheng Ying sword belongs to. Su Luo's eyes hooked into a mocking expression. Okay then let's see in the end, to whom this Cheng Ying sword belongs to. Li Yaoyao could take away this Cheng Ying sword? She didn't believe it. Su Luo repeatedly sneered in her heart. Being swept over by Su Luo's contemptuous gaze, immediately, Li Yaoyao couldn't swallow this down. She could let any other person have a low opinion of her, but only Su Luo couldn't. She took a deep breath, and took large strides to walk to the front of that Cheng Ying sword. Cheng Ying sword, with brilliance like jade, oozing a blue color like the bluish-green waves of seawater, calling people to be deeply engrossed with it. Li Yaoyao's right hand was cut off by 7th young master in the 7th challenge. Therefore now, she extended her left hand. Chapter 1145, Cheng Ying Sword 2. Li Yaoyao's hand had just reached within a meter range of the Cheng Ying sword, before she felt an invisible resistance preventing her from continuing forward. Humph! Li Yaoyao gave a dark snort and concentrated all of her spirit force onto her left hand. Li Yaoyao's strength was still considered pretty good, although it was hard, she still bit by bit, got closer to that Cheng Ying sword. Finally, she gripped that sword hilt. Li Yaoyao lifted up her eyes and disdainfully swept Su Luo a glance. Her chin provocatively lifted up high. Su Luo rolled her eyes in annoyance. If you have the ability, then pick up that sword. Exactly, isn't it just holding it for a bit? What's so amazing about that? Ziyan chimed in. Li Yaoyao's cold eyes cast sidelong glances at these 2 people. Then, she switched all of her attention to focus on her left hand. However, the feeling of being proud of herself in her heart was shown in her tone. Because when she grabbed hold of this Cheng Ying sword, she actually didn't sense any resistance nor backlash from the Cheng Ying sword. As if this Cheng Ying sword originally belonged to her. Humph, pick it up, then I'll pick it up. What's so hard about it? Li Yaoyao was full of faith in herself and self-confidence. Without exception, everyone's gazes stared fixedly at Li Yaoyao's left hand. Li Yaoyao being this confident, maybe she can really take away this Cheng sword. Luo Diei anxiously stamped her feet. If she had known earlier, she would have fought to be the first to go up. She can take it away? Carefully continue to watch. In comparison, Luo Haochen wasn't that optimistic about Li Yaoyao. The Li Yaoyao right now was full of confidence in herself. Li Yaoyao imitated Nangong Liuyun's calm, unrestrained and uninhibited attitude from before, and pulled the sword in passing. Soon after, her expression immediately changed. Because that Cheng sword didn't actually move a bit. Ptsu Luo and Ziyan laughed out loud, not giving her face. Li Yaoyao's heart was very anxious. Obviously, the Cheng sword didn't resist. How could she not be able to grab hold of it? Li Yaoyao poured all of her body's spirit force into the Cheng sword. She didn't believe that she couldn't pull it up with this. However, what made Li Yaoyao crumble was that after she had poured in her spirit force, it seemed as if this Cheng sword had opened its mouth wide greedily and swallowed her spirit force in one mouthful. How is this possible? Li Yaoyao's eyes opened wide in disbelief. How could all the spirit force she had poured in disappear? Li Yaoyao still didn't believe in this evil trick. With a flick of her wrist, she poured in another part of dense spirit force. Soon after, the spirit force entered in a steady flow. From Li Yaoyao's perspective, there would be a time when this Cheng sword was full. At worst, she first sacrificed a bit, and then they discussed it after feeding it fully. However, what drove Li Yaoyao mad was that she had steadily poured her spirit force into it for an incense stick's amount of time. Her spirit force had almost been consumed completely. However, the Cheng sword was still motionless, without any reaction, whereas her spirit force was like creek water flowing into the vast ocean water, without raising a trace of a ripple. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Li Yaoyao's face was pale, dripping wet with cold sweat. But her palm continued to grab firmly onto that sword hilt, reluctant to let go. Because once she let go, it would represent that there was no possibility of her getting this Cheng sword. Yaoyao, forget it. Situming, seeing Li Yaoyao's body tottering on the edge of collapse because of consuming too much spirit force, called out in a distressed manner. However, Li Yaoyao didn't pay him any heed, still stubbornly and unwaveringly pouring the last bit of her spirit force into it. Now perspiration covered her entire face, drenched her clothing. Even the ground had droplets of sweat. Chapter 1146, Cheng Sword 3. However, the Cheng sword remained deadly still. Suddenly, Li Yaoyao's body swayed. Yaoyao! Situ Ming cried out in alarm, gave a loud shout and suddenly rushed up to hold Li Yaoyao. The moment he came in contact with Li Yaoyao, Situ Ming suddenly felt a strong suctioning force coming through from the center of his palm. Damn it! Situ Ming cursed. The strong spirit force in his body, like overturned seas, rushed out, suddenly pushing out that suctioning force. Soon after, he pulled on Li Yaoyao and quickly fell back. After falling back, Situ Ming wiped away a handful of sweat. If it wasn't for him falling back so quickly, maybe his spirit force would also be sucked away. Yaoyao! Situ Ming lowered his head and saw a pale, white as paper complexion. Having lost a huge amount of spirit force, now Li Yaoyao's complexion was very unsightly. Not a trace of blood was on her face, moreover, she had sunk into a deep unconscious state. Everyone was all endlessly apprehensive. No one had expected that this Cheng sword would be so terrifying. Now everyone could clearly see, just now Li Yaoyao was pouring her spirit force into it. Just at this moment, suddenly, the outside black-colored air condensed into a cylinder and abruptly smashed towards their direction. One could only hear the sound of a boom. The entire ground shook violently. Although the attack didn't enter, however, this area's protection seemed to have loosened a bit. Everyone's complexion all changed. Not good. The black-colored air has assembled. This protective area can't be maintained for much longer. Luo Haochen's complexion was very ugly, carrying a faint trace of anxiety. Nangong Liuyun's eyes narrowed slightly, faintly sweeping a glance at the very formidable, murderous-looking black-colored air stream. His expression was the same as before, and in an indifferent tone said, "Continue." "That's right. Didn't that little ginseng person say? Pull out this Cheng sword, then everything will be fine." Luo Haochen excitedly pushed Luo Die. However, Luo Die's thoughts were a little different from Luo Haochen's. Even though Luo Haochen fiercely pushed her in the back, she still remained unmoving. She merely gazed guardedly at Ziyan. From her perspective, now the only one who could threaten her was Ziyan. As for Su Luo, that sickly appearance, she couldn't even stand up straight. How could she even pull out the sword? This was simply impossible. As a result, Luo Die saw Ziyan as her greatest rival. Ziyan wrinkled her brows, impatiently glaring at her. "When all's said and done, are you going up or not? Simply say something, ah." Luo Die was still thinking it over very hard, weighing the pros and cons very clearly. This Cheng sword needed to absorb enough spirit force before being able to pull it out. Just now, Li Yaoyao's spirit force was sucked out until she was dry. Now it had already absorbed a lot of. Now to go up there was a possibility of obtaining the Cheng sword, also the possibility of helping Ziyan get it. "Luo Die, there is no more time for you to waste since you won't go up, then I'll go. Wait until I get Cheng sword, afterwards, don't say I didn't give you a chance." Ziyan rolled her eyes in annoyance. She saw Luo Die still remain silent, then gave a cold snort, and walked towards that Cheng sword. Ziyan took a deep breath, sank into a horse stance, and the right palm, inched bit by bit towards the Cheng sword. Finally, steadily grabbed onto it. Her speed and strength was not inferior in any aspect to Li Yaoyao. Now everyone's gaze was focused on Ziyan's body. Ziyan now bore the weight of everyone's hope. If she pulled out Cheng sword, then the black-colored air would automatically retreat. Then everyone would be safe. Luo Die bit her lower lips. Her heart continued to be intertwined. An even more complicated expression was in her eyes. Chapter 1147. Cheng Sword 4. Su Luo's hands were together in prayer, giving Ziyan her sincerest blessings. As Li Yaorao had said, her body couldn't even stand up steadily. With just a blow from the wind, she would fall. How could she go to pull out the Cheng sword? Lu Die was injured at the wrist. Her strength had greatly decreased. Also, her intentions were not honest, so Su Luo also didn't want her to get the Cheng sword. If it was to say who here had the most hope of getting the Cheng sword, then that could only be Ziyan, without a doubt. Ziyan, who bore the weight of everyone's hope. Now, she had already slowly poured her spirit force into the Cheng sword. She could clearly sense the Cheng sword open its mouth wide, quickly sucking in the spirit force she was pouring in. Time passed, bit by bit. Ziyan's figure swayed. Not good. She is about to be defeated. Luo Haochen's complexion turned slightly white. A lot of people also had the same thought as Luo Haochen. Beichen Ying's heart suddenly was anxious and yelled at Ziyan. "If it won't work, forget it. We'll think of other ways. By all means, don't fight to death, ah. Just now, with Li Yaoyao looking like that, you should learn from her mistake." Ziyan's figure trembled more violently, because the spirit force in her body was rapidly being drained off. Just when everyone thought Ziyan was about to give up, suddenly, a little blue-colored thing rushed out from Ziyan's sleeves. This was that little blue elf, the elemental elf that was capable of automatically replenishing spirit force. This little thing made a circle like a foolish penguin with a foolish brain. Sensing that Master's situation wasn't good, afterwards, his chubby little face was stretched taut. Soon after, he spit out one blue-colored bubble after another. It blew more and more blue-colored bubbles that orbited continuously around Ziyan's body, being endlessly absorbed by her. Elemental elf. Luo Haochen was so startled that his chin was about to drop to the floor. Oh heavens! It really is an elemental elf, ah! Luo Die covered her mouth in astonishment. The rest of the people were also greatly surprised. If you must know, elemental elves were a kind of spirit pet that was a treasure that one could only come across serendipitously. You couldn't find a few on the entire continent. No matter how strong an expert, during a battle, their spirit force would be decreased. However, with an elemental elf on hand, anytime and anywhere, they could replenish their spirit force. How cool of an existence was this? Never expected that Ziyin was hiding such a treasure. So it seems she would be the owner of this Cheng sword. Luo Haochen said with a complicated expression. Everyone had seen this thing before, but everyone thought that this was a fighting spirit pet Ziyin was raising. However, no one had expected that this was actually an elemental elf that could replenish one's spirit force. Luo Die bit her lower lips, both eyes glowing with hatred. If she had known earlier that Ziyin had an elemental elf in hand, she would have already gone up first, rather than so readily surrender such a good opportunity in vain. Her Cheng sword, just like this, was gone. Don't say how much Luo Die's heart was full of grudges. In fact, now, Ziyin also didn't feel so good. Her elemental elf was still in its infancy. The spirit force it could provide was finite. Moreover, this Cheng sword in front of her was opening its mouth, as though it couldn't be satisfied. After swallowing so much spirit force, there wasn't any indication that it was full. In the wake of time passing, don't know when, the elemental elf's little plump body had deflated. On its chubby face, those huge limpid eyes wanted to cry but lacked the tears. As if it was being wronged and suffering in pain, but was unable to say it. Ziyin took a glance and her heart tore painfully from what she saw. Her treasured elemental elf was already unable to keep it up. However, recalling that behind her was the unreliable Luo Die and the frail-bodied Su Luo, Ziyin clenched her teeth and still persisted on. Chapter 1148. Cheng Sword 5. Men can only hold the Qi Xiao sword, only women can pick up the Cheng sword. These were the ironclad rules. No one was able to violate them. In order for these group of people to survive, in order to get to the 9th layer to help Su Luo get the medicine, Ziyin, with blurred vision and who was about to faint, heavily bit down on her tongue. The pain from her tongue helped her become somewhat clear-headed. However now, her complexion was even more unsightly than Li Yaoyao's from before. Her face was white as snow, without a trace of blood color. Ziyin, you should get down. Su Luo's heart couldn't bear it. Ziyin shook her head. No, she must persevere on. Ziyin. Beichening anxiously took 2 steps forward. Just at this moment, all of a sudden, the elemental elf's small body at Ziyin's foot, with a bang, fell to the ground. Those layers upon layers of bubbles revolving around Ziyin burst in a flash. Puff! Ziyin violently spit out a mouthful of blood. Her body suffered the recoil bite, and was very ruthlessly bounced out. Fortunately, Beichening was already prepared from earlier, with one grab, held her in his arms, thus preventing her from knocking against above that hard coffin. Vomit! Ziyin vomited out large mouthfuls of blood, one after another. Ziyin. Su Luo was endlessly distressed. She took out the best spirit restoration pill, and stuffed it into Ziyin's mouth. Now her spirit force was on the edge of being used up. If it was not replenished, very possibly, her blood vessels would suffer permanent damage. Before, when Ziyin was struggling with the Cheng sword, no one was able to get near her. As a result, Su Luo could only hold the spirit restoration pill in her palm, being prepared at any time. Seeing Ziyin's breathing become smooth after swallowing the spirit restoration pill, Situ Ming's eyes sharply shot towards Su Luo. Miss Su, how can you be this selfish? Su Luo's expression was not good as she swept a glance at Situ Ming. What does young master Situ mean? Just before, Yao Yao also received the same injury as Miss Ziyin. Why, when you clearly had spirit restoration pills, and wouldn't undertake the task to help others? Situ Ming self-righteously questioned. Su Luo looked at this infatuated species as if looking at an idiot, and coldly smiled. Li Yao Yao? What does her being injured have any relationship to me? Young master Situ thinks I'm the goddess of mercy Guanyin, that saves people in hardship and suffering? Or with mercy at heart, like Mary, mother of Jesus? But we are teammates. Situ Ming was so enraged that his complexion was deathly white. Through clenched teeth he squeezed out this sentence. Teammates? I don't have teammates that mock and ridicule me while secretly stabbing me with a knife. Su Luo looked at him with a smile. But her eyes were ice-cold without a thread of temperature. With regards to Situ Ming, in the beginning, She still had sympathy for him because of Li Yaoyao, that ingrate. But as for now, Su Luo finally got it. There must be something hateful about a pitiful person. Situ Ming was choked off by Su Luo's sentence and his face became red. He never expected that this little mist that would fall from one blow of the wind, with a sickly complexion, her words would be so sharp. Now there was a strange quiet all around. All of a sudden, Luo Die walked toward Su Luo. Afterwards, she firmly stood at Su Luo's side. She looked at Su Luo with an earnest expression. "Miss Su, may I ask, do you still have more spirit restoration pills?" Luo Die's facial expression tried to show true sincerity, but her pair of constantly evasive eyes betrayed her. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into an indifferent sneer. "Oh? Reportedly, Luoyu Palace Hall is famous on the continent because of medicinal pills. Could it be Miss Luo doesn't even have a single spirit restoration pill on her body?" Truthfully speaking, she really had a lot of spirit restoration pills in her space. Bottle after bottle piled up. These were all the ones she made this year from practicing to be an apothecary. There were still several bottles of Grandmaster-level spirit restoration pills that her master gave her. However, no matter how many spirit restoration pills Su Luo had, she still wouldn't give the calculating Luo Die any for free. Chapter 1149. Cheng Sword 6. Luo Die bit her lower lips, looking as if she had been wronged, giving off a wretched, pitiful and delicate appearance. "Miss Su, yours is Grandmaster-level spirit restoration pills Although our Luoyu Palace Hall is well known for our medicinal pills, frankly speaking, Grandmaster-level spirit restoration pills, our hall only had 3. Moreover, we didn't bring it." Grandmaster-level spirit restoration pills? Everyone else all used a shocked gaze to stare at Su Luo. No matter what kind of medicinal pills, as long as Grandmaster level, these 2 words were added in front of it. That was all very amazing. Moreover, it would be a priceless treasure Luo Haochen also took 2 steps forward, looking at Su Luo full of smiles. "Miss Su, it's not because Die wants to take small advantage of you. Truly now, the situation is urgent. You see now, there is only Die who has the ability to try and strive for the sword. If we can't pull out this Cheng sword once again, all of us will die." Luo Haochen was much smarter than Luo Die. He understood how to exploit the pressure of public opinion to press Su Luo. Situ Ming's forehead wrinkled slightly. "Miss Su, the reason why so many of us would gather at the 9 different palace halls is all because of searching for medicine for you." Luo Haochen cast Nangong Luyan a glance and added a sentence. "The reason we all entered the most difficult death grade is also because of searching for medicine for you." Situ Ming coldly glared at Su Luo. "In order to find medicine for you, Yao Yao already lost a hand." Luo Haochen followed immediately with another sentence. "In order to find medicine for you, us siblings also lost a hand each." Sentence after sentence of condemnation put heavy pressure on Su Luo. If Su Luo was an ordinary young lady not well versed in the matters of the world, seeing them pay such a price, she would have already killed herself from the guilt and shame. Unfortunately, the Su Luo in front of them had a formidable strong soul from her previous life. The corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted up in a sneer. "In order to find medicine for me? Haha, it really is ironic. Before, who was it that, at the gate of Xian's Wood residence, took their team and left? Who was it that was being chased by the snow lions within an inch of their life before finally fleeing into Xian's Wood residence for lack of other choices? To sacrifice one's life in order to find medicine for me? When you guys said these words, why is it that you don't feel like blushing?" Yu Luo Haochen, panting in rage, pointed at Su Luo. At this moment, a lanky arm suddenly extended out. A finger flicked high into the sky. One could only hear a light whoosh sound. Luo Haochen gave a miserable shriek of pain. He only had one right hand remaining. That extended out finger was already cut off high in the air. "Next time, you won't be so fortunate." Nangong Liuyun's demon-like, unsympathetic tone sounded. He stood at Su Luo's side, steady as a majestic mountain, giving off an imposing manner that was like large, raging waves. That expression was ice-cold, like being covered in snow for a millennium. Nobody dared to meet his gaze. Luo Haochen regretted so much that he fumed with rage in his heart. However, he dared not to confront Nangong Luoyun. He could only inwardly swallow this mouthful of bitter water. Nangong Luoyun's cold and detached gaze shot towards Situming, eyes wrinkled slightly. You bully Su Luo again, just try me. Situming turned his face away. He finally got it. As long as it involved Su Luo, this young lady, third junior brother, immediately became a person who didn't recognize his own family, heartless and reeking of blood. This kind of Nangong Luoyun he couldn't afford to offend. Luo Jie saw that Luo Haochen and Situming graduated without a victory and almost died. She could only put away her thoughts of benefiting at Su Luo's expense. Afraid that Nangong Luoyun would settle the account later, Luo Jie quickly took 2 steps forward to walk to the front of Cheng Ying's sword. With the spirit force Li Yaoyao and Ziyin poured in, she truly didn't believe that this Cheng Ying sword wouldn't get full. Luo Jie cast Ziyin a glance, the corner of her mouth hooking into a proud sneer. Ziyin took the trouble to pour in all her spirit force and added all the spirit force of an elemental elf. She will pick up all of these small advantages. Chapter 1150. Cheng Ying Sword 7. Ziyin glared at Luo Jie fiercely, yet she had no choice but to watch on helplessly as Luo Jie's hand grabbed hold of that Cheng Ying sword. The spirit force on Luo Jie's body poured into it in a steady flow. Everyone's gazes were all fixated on Luo Jie's hand, staring fixedly without blinking. At this moment, Luo Jie's expression was solemn and reserved, serious and dignified. She realized that this Cheng Ying sword really was a big eater. Unexpectedly, no matter how much she fed it, it wasn't getting full. As time passed, bit by bit, only 1/3 of the spirit force on Luo Jie's body remained from being sucked out. At this time, Luo Jie's heart was gradually starting to panic somewhat, because she discovered that this Cheng Ying sword was a bottomless pit. Her spirit force that was poured in was like raindrops falling into the ocean without causing a single ripple. What to do? Could it be that she had to leave the stage like Li Yaorao and Ziyin? No, she absolutely didn't want to be like Ziyin and have all her spirit force sucked dry. Just when Luo Jie was pondering whether she should give up, suddenly, she felt the body of this Cheng Ying sword tremble slightly. Following this, the amount of spirit force it swallowed began to lessen. Luo Jie's eyes lit up in a flash. The spirit force that Cheng Ying's sword was absorbing became less and less. Wasn't this the rhythm signifying that the Cheng Ying sword was already starting to get full? Oh heavens! Her decision to go on the stage after Ziyin was the best decision she'd ever made in her entire life. Now this Cheng Ying sword was already pretty much hers. Thinking up to here, the corners of Luo Jie's lips raised into a smile. Her hands weren't slow either as her spirit force slowly poured into it like an endless stream. If the spirit force at the start was like a stream, then the spirit force Luo Jie was pouring in now was like the tiny mouth of a fountain. A tiny amount, little by little. Then right at this moment, suddenly, all around came a ramming sound which caused the earth to quake and the mountains to shake. Not good. The barrier is about to be broken into. Luo Haochen's face showed a terrified expression as he anxiously called out loudly. That ramming from just now, because Luo Haochen was closest to the barrier. He was knocked against until his blood rolled over and over. He almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. Luo Jie's expression grew cold, and she stared even more fixedly at the Cheng Ying D word. Soon she would pull out the Cheng Ying sword. As long as she pulled out the Cheng Ying sword, the black streams of air would automatically disperse. But what she imagined was beautiful, yet reality was very thin. Luo Jie's spirit force poured in nonstop while she urged it continuously. However, the Cheng Ying sword was just like a naughty child, unhurriedly sucking in the spirit force evenly. Not much, but not stopping either. This made Luo Jie feel like she was about to be driven mad, and on the verge of collapse. Because less than 1% of her spirit force remained. Clang! The column condensed from black air ruthlessly struck towards them. At this moment, Luo Jie was on the verge of exhausting her spirit force. Being jolted by such strong burst of strikes, her body was immediately sent flying and firmly knocked against the coffin. No! A mournful bellow burst out from Luo Jie. Her Cheng Ying sword That Cheng Ying sword had almost eaten its full. During such a crucial moment, How could she have been sent flying? She really wasn't reconciled. This was more painful than killing her. Luo Jie was knocked flying into the ground, but she withstood the acute pain in her body. She did a carp roll and scrambled back onto her feet. Her body was like an artillery shell as she shot towards the Chengying sword. Chengying sword. My Chengying sword. At lightning speed, Luo Jie's left palm very quickly extended towards the hilt of the Chengying sword. However, something that would cause her to fall apart occurred. She'd forgotten the restrictions surrounding the Chengying sword. Without spirit force, it's not like she wanted to reach in and could reach in. Chapter 1151 Unexpected 1. Luo Jie reached out her hand, incessantly wanting to grab hold of that Chengying sword. However, what made her fall apart was that the barrier surrounding the Chengying sword was simply too strong. No matter how she tried, she couldn't reach inside it. This matter was something she had to solve by herself. There was no way for others to help her. No. My Chengying sword. Luo Jie was so anxious that she began to cry. Like what was before her wasn't the Chengying sword, but rather her dead parents. She cried exceedingly mournfully. Even Su Luo was speechless. However, regardless of how emotionally Luo Jie pounded at that barrier, it was all to no avail. Luo Jie's body only had a tiny bit of spirit force remaining. After tossing it around like that, on top of the huge disparity, her mind couldn't endure it. Her body leaned askew and fell completely to the ground. For a moment there was a strange quiet all around. Out of the party of 8 people, 7 had already gone off the stage after being tested. The only one who hadn't tried was Su Luo. Rumble outside, the column of black air collided against the barrier nonstop. Everyone felt their blood roll over and over. They were caught in a dizzy spell. Quickly! If the Chengying sword isn't pulled out now, we are all finished. Luo Haochen bellowed anxiously. Luo Haochen's words weren't exaggerated at all. Following the passing of time, the column of black air became increasingly thick and solid. Its colliding strength was also getting stronger and stronger. The protective barrier was on the verge of collapse, as if it would cave in at any moment. No good. The moment Li Yaoyao woke up and opened her eyes, she saw a thread of black air spread to inside the barrier. Everyone followed her line of sight and looked. Seeing it, they couldn't help but be greatly shocked. Hurry! The black air has already gotten inside. Quickly pull out the Chengying sword. Since a bit of it had already gotten inside, then that meant there would be even more coming in until this clean place would become permeated with black air. However, who would go to pull out the Chengying sword? The men definitely couldn't do it. All 4 of them had been used once and eliminated. Among the women, Li Yaoyao, Luo Jie, and Ziyan had already tried it. None of them could do it. Now everyone's gazes were uniformly watching Su Luo attentively. Those pair after pair of eyes, that were like hungry wolves with a glowing dark sea green radiance, stared at Su Luo to the point of making her hair stand on end. Su Luo scratched her head gloomily. Are you guys certain you want me to try? There's no harm in trying. Luo Haochen was trying everything in a desperate situation. Why are you still dilly-dallying? Hurry up! All of our lives are in your hands. Su Luo suddenly felt a great responsibility. Alright, I'll just make an effort to give it a try. Truth be told, Su Luo didn't have a bit of confidence in herself. Of course, others also had no confidence in her. However, they didn't want to abandon their last shred of hope. Girl, don't force yourself. Nangong Luyan held onto Su Luo's hand and brought her before the Chengying sword. Then he said determinedly, try it. If it doesn't work, we'll think of another way. Even Nangong Luyan didn't hold a single thread of hope in Su Luo. He was betting on Su Luo's crazy luck. Because Su Luo's body was weak to this degree, just walking a few steps, she was already gasping for breath. How could she possibly pull out the Chengying sword? Su Luo sighed and reached out with her hand. As expected, just a slight touch of the powerful barrier surrounding the Chengying sword, and that ripple-like vibration ricocheted back Su Luo's hand. Originally, everyone was watching Su Luo anxiously, but when they saw her hand get thrown back out so easily before it even reached inside, moreover, her body even fell into Nangong Liuyun's embrace because of the vibration. Chapter 1152, Unexpected 2. For a moment, many of them stared at Su Luo with disdainful gazes. But Luo Die, who was initially grieving inconsolably and heartbroken, let out a cold laugh. Su Luo, you should hurry up and get down. Or do you think you haven't embarrassed yourself enough? The corners of Li Yaoyao's lips curled up mockingly. You can't even grasp hold of the sword hilt. Alas, how embarrassing. How do you have the nerve to step up and try to pull out the sword? If I were you, I would directly give up. With a trace of cold intent in her eyes, Su Luo swept a glance at Li Yaoyao. Li Yaoyao met Su Luo's gaze and suddenly, her heart stiffened. Clearly, Su Luo was a useless person completely lacking spirit force. However, that pair of eyes was so clear and bright, couldn't help but cause people to be afraid. Li Yaoyao scoffed coldly and turned her face away awkwardly. Su Luo frowned slightly. If she wanted to grab hold of the Cheng sword, it's not completely impossible. However, that would deal great harm to her body. Before Su Luo could settle on a plan, all of a sudden, a shadow attacked towards her forehead. That speed was extremely fast. So quick that everyone only saw something glide past their eyes. And the thing had already smacked onto Su Luo's forehead. How fast was Nangong Liuyun's speed? But even he was unable to block that thing from dropping onto her. All they heard was a pow sound, and that thing had already smacked Su Luo's head until she was dizzy and almost couldn't stand on her feet. What's this thing? Gloomily, Su Luo picked up that thing which had almost given her a concussion. What is it? Ziyan followed with a question curiously. It seems to be a glove. Su Luo was suddenly dumbfounded. She raised her head and looked all around her, yet she couldn't find a single clue. Why would her forehead suddenly be smashed with a pair of gloves? Regarding this point, Su Luo was truly perplexed after much thought. Everyone also felt that this was extremely strange. Where exactly had these gloves flown out from? Moreover, to coincidentally smash towards Su Luo's forehead? Just looking at this situation, was Su Luo's luck good, or was it actually bad? Right when everyone was puzzled and at a loss, suddenly, a somewhat mocking voice rang out. Girl, just now, I forgot to give you your reward. So, I've come especially to deliver it to you now. Aren't I good? Seventh young master's calm and composed voice gave everyone a scare. No one would have thought that the 7th challenge's 7th young master would unexpectedly run over to the 8th challenge. One had to know, although this was the 9 different palace halls, one was the 7th layer and another was the 8th. However, each layer was an independent world that could only be entered through the teleportation array. Su Luo gently stroked the glove's material, and the tips of her eyebrows raised slightly. A smile spread across her face as she said, "Thank you." She really needed to thank the 7th young master. These gloves would save her a lot of trouble. When 7th young master received Su Luo's thanks, he laughed happily. However, when Su Luo wanted to call out to stop him, he turned around and disappeared. These gloves. What are they? Curiosity filled Ziyan's eyes. Try them and we'll know. Su Luo smiled shallowly and calmly put on that pair of blue gloves. If she hadn't guessed wrong, these gloves would bring her a great and pleasant surprise. Seeing more and more of the black air rushing in, Su Luo took a deep breath, and with her gloved hand, she slowly reached towards the sword hilt. Oh, everyone's sight blurred for a second. When their eyes refocused, they saw that she had already firmly grasped onto that sword hilt. She'd gotten hold of it. Moreover, she'd done it so easily. Li Yaoyao was so shocked that her jaw was about to drop to the ground. How could this be? Every one of them who had wanted to touch the sword hilt had all needed to spend an immeasurable amount of spirit force to fight with that barrier, and even then, only managed to touch the sword hilt after great difficulty. However, Su Luo, after she put on that unfathomably mysterious glove, she could immediately take hold of that sword hilt? That barrier actually didn't reject her whatsoever? Was there anything so unfair as this? Li Yaoyao and Luo Die gnashed their teeth resentfully. Their eyes glared at Su Luo's back, wishing they could glare 2 bloody holes into her. However, regardless of how much they resented her, it was a fact that Su Luo had grabbed hold of the sword hilt. Now the only thing Su Luo needed to do was to draw out that blade. Chapter 1153, Unexpected 3. But how could this sword be so easily drawn out? That Cheng Ying sword still needed to swallow more spirit force. Su Luo couldn't even stand steadily. How could she have spirit force for it to swallow? Everyone gazed at Su Luo with a regretful expression. It was a waste of effort for 7th young master to personally bring over the golden silk gloves. In the end, Su Luo still couldn't draw it out. At this moment, the corners of Su Luo's lips raised into a faint smile. Indeed, the spirit force in her body was not sufficient to draw out this Cheng Ying sword. However, just now before leaving, 7th young master had told her a really simple solution. Su Luo took out a bottle of celestial spirit water from her sleeve, as well as a grandmaster grade spirit restoration pill, and threw it into the bottle. Then she picked up the small porcelain bottle and gave it a shake. What is she doing? Luo Die still didn't understand. Perhaps she wants to drink it? Luo Haochen said, somewhat lacking any confidence. Based on Su Luo's body's current condition, could she even withstand this kind of spirit energy battering? Regarding this, Luo Haochen was very doubtful. However, what he said was only half right. They only saw Su Luo's left hand lift up that already completely dissolved celestial spirit water, and pour the medicinal water, bit by bit, onto Cheng Ying's sword's only clear spring area on the sword blade. Could it be that she thinks doing this will fill up the gap in spirit force on the body of Cheng Ying's sword? Ha ha ha, this is simply hilarious. Luo Die placed both hands on her hips and sneered in a poking fun manner. She understood very clearly just how frightening that Cheng Ying's sword's requirement for swallowing spirit force was. However, just as Luo Die parted her lips to laugh, very quickly, that smile froze at the corners of her lips. Unexpectedly, she stared blankly as Su Luo drew out that Cheng Ying sword. How was this possible? Luo Die rubbed her eyes in disbelief. When she opened her eyes again to look, sure enough, it wasn't that her vision had blurred. Su Luo had really pulled out that Cheng Ying sword. To think that the method she used was so simple and yet immediately effective. Luo Die's eyes were opened wide, momentarily unsure as to how she should react. If she'd only known this earlier. If she'd known it earlier. Luo Die wasn't the only one thinking this way. Everyone present had an expression full of amazement as they looked foolishly at Su Luo. This was simply a fucking miracle. Don't you think so? All the people with high cultivation had already tried it, and their efforts had been useless as they'd been unable to do anything about it. However, at the final moment, the sword was unexpectedly picked up by Su Luo, who couldn't even walk. That wasn't any other sword but the Cheng Ying sword. Thinking of this, Li Yaoyao and Luo Die covered their chests with their hands, almost closing their eyes and fainting away. Just when Su Luo pulled out that Cheng Ying sword, the black air in the atmosphere began to be slowly inhaled back into that weird corpse, mouthful after mouthful. Luo, congratulations, congratulations. Ziyan smiled from the bottom of her heart. She was truly happy for Su Luo. Qi Xiao and Cheng Ying, these formed a pair of exceptionally famous swords. Now they were separately held in Nangong Liuyun's and Su Luo's hands. Wasn't this the most suitable? Su Luo wiped away the sweat on her forehead and said with a smile, "It's luck. It's nothing more than luck." Luck is also a part of one's strength, moreover, it's even more important than strength itself. Nangong Luyun rubbed Su Luo's head. There was nothing special about the strength of his Luo girl. However, the greatest benefit would always somehow end up in her hands. On what basis did this happen? Wasn't it because of luck? Luck is illusionary. Strength is still the most reliable. Su Luo smilingly said. Just now, if 7th young master hadn't rushed over at the crucial moment, then she would have been caught unprepared. The black fog dispersed. Originally, they should hurry up to look for the 9th challenge's portal. However, at this moment, everyone was injured or fainted, with their fighting strength exhausted. So, Nangong Luyun declared that they would rest here at the 8th challenge for a night and advance tomorrow. Chapter 1154. Unexpected 4. Right when everyone was resting, the ginseng baby that had disappeared earlier ran eagerly to in front of Su Luo. Su Luo saw his plump appearance and thought he was extremely cute. So she rubbed his little head and pulled him into her lap to tease and play with it. Su Luo even pulled out a bottle of celestial spirit water for it to drink. Ought to give this to you. To return the favor, Ginseng Baby extracted a slender root from his body and gave it to Su Luo with a deadly earnest expression. It looked like the tassel on a ginseng. Ginseng Baby pursed its lips into a mysterious smile. After that, he let his legs loose and ran far away. Su Luo shook her head and forced a smile. However, since it was a present from the Ginseng Baby, she decided to accept and keep it as a souvenir. The 9th layer's portal wasn't at all easy to find. Everyone searched for a full 7 days before finally finding it at the bottom of the coffin. Making good use of these 7 days, everyone's injuries were more or less recovered. Passing through the transportation array, the party arrived at the 9th layer. The moment they stepped out of the teleportation array, Su Luo felt that it was somewhat hard to breathe. Nangong Luoyun made a prompt decision and grabbed Su Luo's hand. A steady flow of spirit energy was transmitted from his palm into her body. With Nangong Luoyun's spirit energy supporting her, Su Luo was barely able to feel a little better. This place was a world of ice and snow. As far as the eye could see, all around was a vast expanse of white. Above and below them, all of it was big and heavy snowfall. It was truly deserving to be called, not only in name, but also in reality, Snowfield Plateau. Luo Die had just taken 2 steps forward, and she was soon shouting. What's going on? Why is the pressure on the mind so strong in this place? Not only Luo Die felt it, everyone present all felt the same way. Indeed, the pressure on the mind in this 9th layer was enormous, like a viscous liquid condensed in the air, as if sticking them firmly in place. It was extremely difficult even to just take a step forward. Ha ha ha, a resonant laughter suddenly broke out in midair. Everyone was very familiar with this laughter because it had appeared before them many times before. The master of the 9 different palace halls? He had disappeared for so long, and now, the old man was finally willing to make an appearance. Amidst the vast white expanse of the sky, a massive face slowly appeared, practically covering up most of the sky. Never expected that you little rascals would actually reach the 9th level alive. Ha ha ha, not bad, not bad. Although someone cheated, but the master of the 9 different palace halls recalled how the other side had given him a bottle of 9 fragrance exquisite wine, and decided to turn a blind eye. You guys feel the pressure on the mind, right? You'll be engaged in a battle in this kind of environment. This isn't fair. Li Yaoyao shrieked. In this sort of situation, the pressure was so heavy that they could barely breathe. Moreover, they couldn't even take a step, let alone to mention fighting under these circumstances. Despite how much Ziyan loathed Li Yaoyao, she was in complete agreement with Li Yaoyao's point of view this time. This was simply the rhythm of throwing one's life away. Unexpectedly, the master of the 9 different palace halls howled with laughter. How can the so-called death grade be so easy to pass? Oh, let me tell you guys. This 9th challenge is where the death grade truly begins. Starting from now, your team members will die, one by one. In the end, only 2 people can live. Ha ha ha, the master of the 9 different palace halls' laughter was like waves of heavenly thunder, vibrating their eardrums until it felt extremely painful, making them dizzy and lightheaded. Only 2 people can live? Hearing this sentence, everyone was immediately stunned. They never expected that the elimination rate would be this high. Out of a party of 8 people, only 2 people would live? Now you only have 3 days' time. The master of the 9 different palace halls' voice seemed to carry some kind of bewitchment. Within these 3 days, as long as there are only 2 people left, then it will be considered as having passed the 9th challenge. When the time comes, the reward will be very generous. Chapter 1155. Unexpected 5. Nangong Luoyun and Su Luo stood in place. Both of their complexions were somewhat unsightly. The 9 different palace halls' master's gaze swept over Nangong Luoyun's face with a cunning glint in his eyes. I can guarantee on my honor as the 9 different palace halls' master, there is definitely the scarlet blood Ningpo figwort amidst the rewards. This sentence was simply a naked fruit to entice. Luo Haochen and the others' gazes when looking at Nangong Luoyun carried fear and dread. If it said that previously, they had carried an extravagant hope for Nangong Luoyun's magnanimous, benevolent, and noble warrior-like demeanor, Then, after these days of interactions, this extravagant hope had already turned into despair. They were very sure that in order to save Su Luo, there was nothing Nangong Luoyan wouldn't do. Thinking up to here, the fear in Luo Haochen's heart was magnified limitlessly by himself. Magnified so much. In the end he actually was so scared, his entire body trembled. Nangong Luoyan quietly stood where he was. The goose feather-like large snowflakes sprinkled down, like exquisite flowers, faintly discernible and gorgeous. Nangong Luoyan's sharp eyebrows raised up slightly as he cast sidelong glances at the master of the 9 different palace halls. A hint of discontent flashed through the 9 different palace halls' master's eyes. Without waiting for him to speak, Nangong Luoyan's voice faintly rang out. Reportedly, the master of the 9 different palace halls has 2 souls. Don't know if your distinguished self is the black one or white one. The 9 different palace halls' master had 2 souls. The white palace hall master was good and frank, the black palace hall master was deceitful. However, there were very few people who knew about this matter. And out of these few people, who could be counted on one's fingers, it was impossible to have Nangong Luoyan from the younger generation know. The 9 different palace halls' master's eyes narrowed dangerously, and glared at Nangong Luoyan with ill will. He scoffed coldly and heavily. So, it turns out that your distinguished self is the Black Palace Hall Master. Ah. No wonder the way you're handling this is so unreasonable and childish. How ridiculous and disgraceful. Nangong Luoyan taunted ruthlessly. Loathsome boy, you dare criticize this master of the palace halls, tired of living. The Black Palace Hall Master glared at Nangong Luoyan darkly. Then he gave a cold and heavy scoff. Since this is your choice, then fine. You guys walk down that set path. Humph, I see the girl by your side won't live for much longer anyway. Nangong Luoyan's complexion was not good. When Su Luo heard this, she immediately became angry. She was just standing there, not saying a single word, and yet she was still unjustly ridiculed. She coldly looked askance at that Black Palace Hall Master. With Nangong around, I'll definitely live longer than you. You're so leisurely. You should be worrying about yourself instead. The Black Palace Hall Master immediately grew furious. He got so angry that he bellowed. You despicable fellow and loathsome girl. The 2 of you who don't know how to differentiate good from bad. Such a good shortcut and you won't take it. You insist on challenging the most difficult route. Fine, since I have already finished saying the things I ought to say. When the time comes, regardless of whether you live or die, can't blame me. Panting with rage, the 9 different palace halls master said a whole lot of stuff in one breath. It could be seen how angry he was inside. If he hadn't been entrusted with this task by someone, why would he do this sort of thing to instruct people using pretext for gossip? Humph. Actually, how could Su Luo not know in her heart that this black soul of the 9 different palace halls master was doing this for their own good? Although she didn't know why he was this biased, but he was very clearly biased. However, if they really went down the route this 9 palace halls master had arranged, she and Nangong Luoyan alone would survive, but Beichen and Ziyan's lives would certainly be sacrificed. So Nangong Luoyan and Su Luo had simultaneously decided on a different path with untold dangers and difficulties. Nangong Luoyan had confidence in himself. Su Luo had her friendship which she could not give up on. At this time, how could Beichen and Ziyan not understand the meaning in the Black Palace Hall Master's words? They looked at Su Luo, wanting to say something but hesitated. However, Luo Haochen and the others secretly let out a sigh of relief. They thought about it for quite a while before realizing that this Black Palace Hall Master had indeed come to skew the road. Everyone had originally been walking on that road, but this Black Palace Hall Master had insisted that Nangong Luoyan pick the shortcut. And this shortcut was to kill them all except for Su Luo. You 2 idiots. The Black Palace Hall Master's complexion got as dark as the bottom of a pot. Since the 2 of you wholeheartedly want to court death, then this Palace Hall Master will help accomplish it. This Black Palace Hall Master was clearly acting in a fit of pique. Chapter 1156. Unexpected 6. One could only see this Black Soul Master of 9 different palace halls puff out a single breath. The mental pressure on the snowfield plateau suddenly increased by a fold. I feel terrible. Almost can't breathe anymore. The sweat on Li Yaoyao's face rolled down like running water. It wasn't just Li Yaoyao. Luo Jie and Ziyin were also somewhat unable to endure this formidable pressure. It was like they were carrying large mountains on their backs. Every step forward they took was terribly difficult. I feel like I'm about to fall apart soon. Ziyin scowled miserably as she gloomily wiped away the endless stream of sweat rushing out onto her face. She realized that with every step she took, the bones inside her body creaked and groaned, as if her body would fall apart at any moment. It was really extremely terrifying. Su Luo looked at Ziyin with a face full of sympathy. At this time, she was being protected by Nangong Luyin, so she didn't directly feel the effect of this powerful pressure. Compared to the others, she was the most relaxed person here. Right at this moment, suddenly, a wave of formless murderous aura gradually approached towards them. A cold chill flashed across Nangong Luyun's deep beautiful eyes as he said coldly, "Prepare to fight." Prepare to fight? Li Yaoyao felt that she was about to go mad. Now don't even mention fighting. She couldn't even stand steadily. How could she even fight? However, the enemy wouldn't pity her just because she was in a predicament. On the contrary, they would be even more aggressive. Whoosh, 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 shadow after shadow appeared on the snowfield plateau. Oh heavens, it's snow lions. Li Yaoyao saw this and practically went mad. How could she forget these snow lions? Back then, she had already led her group to leave. Then later on, they were relentlessly pursued by the snow lions that wanted to kill them. The group of people then fled in a pitiful state into Xian's wood residence. However now, these snow lions had unexpectedly appeared before their eyes, alive and in the flesh. Moreover, every one of them was strong, muscular and trim, with shiny hair that shone with the luster of gems. In the end, what on earth is going on? Luo Jie shrieked out the words in Li Yaoyao's heart. That's right. Just what is going on? Why would the snow lions, which were originally outside Xian's wood residence, suddenly appear inside? Howl, the gazes of the snow lions emitted a faint green light, like those of wolves. The snow lions roared furiously towards Li Yaoyao. These snow lions still remembered Li Yaoyao and her group. It's sure to be troublesome this time. Su Luo gloomily scowled. No matter. Nangong Luyun calmly stood beside Su Luo and spoke without any urgency nor slowness, unruffled. What do you mean? Could it be that you have a way? Su Luo raised her palm-sized little face up curiously. Nangong Luyun spread his hands out noncommittally. We've already reached the 9th layer. What relationship does their life and death have to do with us? Su Luo took a deep breath and then let it out helplessly. Simultaneously, she gave a thumbs up to Nangong Luyun. His Highness Prince Jin, you're awesome. The snow lions were very united, and were also a race that held grudges. Consequently, at this time, approximately 12 snow lions circled around Li Yaoyao's 4 people. Ziyin and Beichen never took the initiative to attack the snow lions, so the snow lions wouldn't take the initiative to provoke the strong experts of the human race either. How 3 snow lions continued to get nearer to Li Yaoyao. However, fortunately, that formidable pressure was also effective on the snow lions. As a result, the movements of the 3 snow lions were also hindered. Although their movements were slow and with every step they took, sweat would drip to the ground, not only did these challenges not stop them, on the contrary, it allowed for a flame-like excitement to jump up in the snow lion's eyes. Don't come over. Li Yaoyao was so anxious that she nearly went mad. Chapter 1157. Unexpected 7. However, no matter how loudly Li Yaoyao shrieked, the snow lions still charged towards her with strong fighting intent. No, don't. Li Yaoyao knew of the snow lion's fighting strength. She turned around, wanting to flee, but the pressure in this 9th layer was truly too strong. Li Yaoyao's speed soared to its peak, but it still looked like a slow motion of spacewalking. Li Yaoyao was so anxious that beads of sweat rolled down from her forehead to the ground. The snow lion's speed might not be comparable to Li Yaoyao's, however, the snow lions were smart, and there were more of them. The 3 of them surrounded Li Yaoyao in a circle and trapped her inside. They left her with no escape route, and then slowly approached her. Second senior brother. Seeing that her thigh was about to get bitten, Li Yaoyao anxiously wailed loudly. Situming had just disposed of a snow lion. Hearing Li Yaoyao call for help in such a way, he suddenly turned his head. Seeing her like this, Situming was immediately very anxious. In spite of a snow lion taking a bite out of his back, Situming still charged towards Li Yaoyao like he was flying. Situming hurried urgently but slowly, and he finally reached Li Yaoyao's side. With one kick, he kicked a snow lion away. Second senior brother. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Li Yaoyao grabbed the cloth at Situming's chest, and cried so broken-heartedly and with such despair. Yaoyao, don't cry, don't cry. Second senior brother is here. Situming smiled bitterly as he comforted Li Yaoyao. At this moment, there were still 4 people who had yet to enter the fighting ring. These 4 people were naturally Su Luo and her group. Situming is totally devoted to Li Yaoyao. Look, even the bone on his back is exposed. Su Luo pointed at Situming's back. Ziyan wiped away the beads of sweat which continuously emerged on her forehead. With an unconcerned expression, she glared at Li Yaoyao, who was hiding behind Situming's back, and scoffed. Without second senior brother, she would have died 100 times over. However, pitiful people had places that were hateful. Ziyan didn't have much of a favorable impression of Situming either. Spread out before their eyes was a slow-motion replay. Because under this formidable pressure, their every moment was like a slow-motion replay, appearing incomparably comical, yet extremely thrilling. With Situming's protection, Li Yaoyao could rest easy, because when the snow lions attacked, Situming would rather use his own arm to block than let Li Yaoyao suffer even the slightest harm. When the battle ended, there was not a single part of Situming's body which was in a good state. He was either scratched by the sharp claws of the snow lions or bitten. However, the first thing he did when the battle ended was to take hold of Li Yaoyao and examine her up and down anxiously. How is it? You aren't hurt, right? In fact, aside from her lost hand, not even a single drop of blood had splashed onto her. However, Li Yaoyao still wept and sobbed as she nodded. I was really afraid just now. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Second senior brother will always be by your side protecting you. With an aching heart, Situming embraced her. Looking over Situming's shoulder, Li Yaoyao glared at Su Luo provocatively. Even if she didn't have third senior brother, she still had second senior brother who would give up his life for her. Su Luo raised her eyebrows in a smile that was not a smile. Then she very naturally looped her arms into Nangong Liuyun's arm. Even though she didn't say a word, just this small action showed who was better between the two. Li Yaoyao got so angry that she gnashed her teeth. Yet there was nothing she could do. While Situming and Li Yaoyao were having their moment of deep and heavy emotion, the Luo siblings were also engaged in combat with the snow lions. However, Luo Jie's luck was clearly not as good as Li Yaoyao's, because she didn't have a second senior brother, who was willing to die for her. Chapter 1158, Unexpected 8. In the end, it was still Nangong Liuyun who couldn't watch it anymore, so in passing he slapped out several palm strikes, and completely exterminated the remaining several snow lions. At this moment, the Luo siblings cut an extremely sorry figure, from head to toe. They were covered in blood and riddled with scars everywhere. They appeared exceedingly wretched and bedraggled. Seeing the ground full of dead snow lions, the Luo siblings exchanged a glance, then sat on the ground. It was as if all of their body strength was completely sucked away at this moment. Finally, all the snow lions were disposed off. After we get out, we won't have to worry about being besieged. Luo Haochen, with lingering fear, pantingly said. Ziyan raised her lips in a ghost of a smile. Go out? That will also depend on fate to go out. Luo Haochen coldly glared at Ziyan. Even if you guys didn't help, then fine. Still making cynical remarks. Don't forget who was the reason that we would come to this 9 different palace halls to start on death grade mission. Su Luo smiled shallowly. Oh, who was it because of? Even if she could get the medicine, that would also be to Nangong Liuyun's credit. These people wanted to push all the blame onto her. Then, when the time comes, to snatch away all the credit? How could Su Luo let them prevail? Nangong Liuyun's ice-cold gaze shot towards Luo Haochen. Luo Haochen immediately swallowed the words he had mulled over for half a day. Faced with Nangong Luoyuan, Luo Haochen trembled deeply in his heart with reverence and fear. They rested in place for a moment. Then the party of people took difficult steps and walked forward. According to what the Black Palace Hall Master said, at most they had 3 days of time. If the 3 days had passed and they still couldn't find the Scarlet Blood Ningpo figwort, then it was regarded as having failed the mission. Everyone knew the consequences for failing the mission. However, in this snow-covered plateau, being pressured by a strong expert, they looked for 2 whole days. Besides seeing the heavy snowfall, it was still more big and heavy snowfall. It was a vast expanse of whiteness between heaven and earth. Don't know from where they should look for the Scarlet Blood Ningpo figwort, so much so that there wasn't even a bit of a hint. After the Black Palace Hall Master left, he hadn't appeared again. I really missed that unbridled resonant voice. Su Luo used her hand to wipe the thin layer of sweat on Nangong Luoyuan's forehead and handed over a Grandmaster-grade spirit restoration pill. These 2 days and nights, Nangong Luoyuan continuously used spirit power to condense out a protective cover to tightly protect her. But in the end he was still immortal, born with a physical body that still could get tired. Su Luo also thought of not burdening him, but now Nangong Luoyuan's protective cover for her was like an oxygen tank. Once she left this protective cover, her breathing would immediately be stifled. All the bones in her body would become fine powder in a flash. Her body would be crushed into a meat patty. Alas! Su Luo gloomily sighed. She just didn't understand. Her luck had always been good to the point of defying the heavens. For how long would she be under anyone in strength? At what time would her strength soar up like a rocket? If she wanted her body to be promoted, it still required one basic condition. That was a healthy body. The Scarlet Blood Ningpo figwort. Su Luo had placed all of her hope on this Scarlet Blood Ningpo figwort. Su Luo climbed up a tree with Nangong Luoyuan's help, the so-called stand tall and see far. This way, she could help a little. From such a short line of sight. How far can you see? Li Yaoyao snorted with disdain. The torment of these 2 days and nights made her whole body feel on the verge of collapse. Su Luo didn't pay her any mind and continued to look around. Oh, what's over there? Su Luo suddenly cried out in surprise. Tisk, deceiving people. Li Yaoyao absolutely didn't believe it. However, Su Luo also didn't have any hope that she would believe her. Nangong Luoyuan jumped up. As he hugged Su Luo to get down, he took in the whole scene in front of him at one glance. Chapter 1159. Unexpected 9. There was a splendorous and majestic palace. Because it was concealed in the hollow of the mountain, and also because of heavy snowfall, therefore, they completely didn't discover it. But Su Luo, with just one random look, saw the boundary. Go over there. Nangong Luoyuan led the way, with Su Luo walking beside him. Behind them walked everyone else, panting for breath. Such a short distance. If it was normally, these experts would fly over in less effort than it took to blink an eye. But now they actually walked for a whole hour. Afterwards, they were tired to the point of panting and almost fainted. Only then did they finally arrive at the palace gate. On the palace's horizontal board was a name. Hell's Palace Hall. Beichening blinked his eyes. I've never heard of it. Ziyan unhappily said. We've been wandering around in the snow for 2 days. Apart from snow, there's more snow. This is the only building we've discovered. Regardless of what is said, we still ought to enter and have a look. Suddenly, Su Luo smiled. Let's go in, it's right in here. Su Luo said with certainty. You're just this self-confident? Luo Die coldly snorted. What if inside is filled with hidden mechanisms with concealed weapons? Su Luo carried the little divine dragon in her arms. Slowly and deliberately stroking the scales on his body, she faintly smiled. You don't want to enter, then don't enter. Her little divine dragon had an automatic treasure hunting ability. Just now, the reason why she climbed up a tree to look all around was also the little divine dragon's idea. That vermilion gate of the Hell's Palace Hall was under a restriction. After Nangong Luoyuan unsealed the restriction, only then was the party of people able to enter. The area inside the Hell's Palace Hall was very large. A person couldn't see the end with one glance. The floor was covered in white marble, White like snow, it gave off a faint glow. There was a strange calmness in the surroundings. Why do I feel so cold? Yin suddenly felt goosebumps arise all over her body. Moreover, this cold was the kind of chilled to the bone feeling, which was from being seen as prey. I feel many gazes are looking at us. Beichening lowered his voice and whispered. Not only did they feel it, Situming also discovered a difference. He pulled Li Yaoyao behind him, and his whole body rapidly entered a battle-ready state. Although he had repeatedly sustained injuries and lost a lot of blood, however, one still shouldn't look down on Situming's fighting strength. Just at this moment, a faint thunder came from the sky. Soon after, this sound of thunder became nearer, closer and closer. Ha 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 ha, this wildly laughing sound, laughter that made everyone dizzy. It almost made everyone fall to the ground and unable to get up again. 9 different palace halls, master? This old guy was finally willing to appear. Yin made a fist and said towards that wildly laughing voice in the sky. You are too stingy of a person. Didn't even give us a map. Moreover, also didn't give us any tips. 9 different palace halls, master, haha laughed. Little girl, want to live. Wherefore is it such an easy matter? Depending on a person isn't as good as depending on yourself. Don't you understand? Don't understand. Yin heavily snorted. At the moment, when all is said and done, there's only a day's time, you say, what ought to be done? The aloof and remote 9 different palace halls master swept a glance over everyone and kindly asked. You guys are sure you don't need to rest a bit? Su Luo pulled at Nangong Luya and whisperingly asked. In the end, is this the Black Soul Palace Hall's master or the White Soul Palace Hall's master? Su Luo's intuition determined that this was the Black Soul Palace Hall master, but was somewhat uncertain. Nangong Liuyun's eyes were half narrowed, and hiddenly made a gesture. Black Palace Hall's master, naturally, it was still that Black Palace Hall's master. However, at this moment, his pretense of being the White Palace Hall's master was really good. Why on earth did he do this? He wanted to continue to lure them into being fooled. Chapter 1160, Unexpected 10. What must be done to obtain the Scarlet Blood Ningpo Figwort? Su Luo's gaze condensed. With an ice-cold expression, she stared at the aloof and remote 9 different palace halls master. Little girl, this road isn't an easy road to walk on. This 9 different palace halls master was all smiles as he looked at Su Luo. Want to get the Scarlet Blood Ningpo Figwort first, must pass Asura's Purgatory. Asura's Purgatory? What kind of stuff is that? Nangong Luyan had an annoyed expression, his eyes indifferent. Speaking frankly, it's just a competition. The 9 different palace halls master smiled easily and in a laid-back manner. However, the rules for this competition are really somewhat cruel. What do you mean? Nangong Liuyun's sword-like eyebrows poked up slightly. Come out. 9 different palace halls master controlled his facial features. Following his words, 8 people walked out in a line from behind the Hell's Palace Hall's gate. These 8 people, each of them was very big, with bodies brimming with strength from all over. They stood there like broad towers, intimidating people at first glance. The 9 different palace halls master's face was all smiles, as if looking forward to the arrival of a good play. Want to enter the palace hall? You guys must defeat them. The 9 different palace halls master's words didn't leave any room for refusal. Divided into groups to battle? Su Luo's voice was indifferent. Yes. Then who goes first and who goes after will be decided by us, right? Su Luo asked an additional sentence. This won't do. The 9 different palace halls master repeatedly shook his head. Who goes first and who goes later is based on the order of the sum of your scores in the previous 8 challenges. Very well. Su Luo reluctantly agreed. It seemed to her, since it was based on the sum of the previous scores, then, the high scores have a little bit of advantage, right? Su Luo's group was in first place, and Ziyan's group was second. Unfortunately, at this moment, Su Luo was completely unaware what kind of immense pressure and hardships this first place would bring them. The order was arranged according to the sum of the scores. The first group to go was precisely the Luo siblings. Su Luo unhappily cast a glance at the 9 different palace halls master. The mind pressure is so heavy, they can't fully display their strength, okay? Luo Jie hurriedly nodded her head. This isn't fair. The 9 different palace halls master cast her an annoyed glance. In this hell different palace hall, temporarily removing the restriction isn't difficult, however. This matter, for you guys, may not necessarily be a good thing. Luo Jie saw that the restriction could be removed. As if welcoming rain after a long drought, extremely pleased to accept it, and said, "Remove it. I strongly request it to be removed." The rest of the people also expressed that they wanted the restriction removed, one after another. Only Su Luo and Nangong Liuyun's expressions were complicated, yet they didn't utter anything to intervene. This restriction was like a double-edged sword, removing it would indeed lighten things. However, if it wasn't removed, if the other side had powerful strength, then their displayed strength would also weaken accordingly. Under Luo Jie and the rest of the people's intense requests, the restriction in Hell Palace Hall was still finally removed by the 9 different palace halls master. Just when the restriction was removed, everyone was like fish that had returned to water again. Finally, they had their breathing restored. Very comfortable, like I've come back to life. Luo Jie and them were gulping mouthful after mouthful of fresh air. 2 days and 2 nights, it was not easy to live under that kind of powerful pressure. You guys are on your own. The 9 different palace halls master gave a sinister smile. He swept a glance over Su Luo and Nangong Liuyun, then turned and disappeared in a flash. The matter is somewhat far from reassuring. Just now, the 9 different palace halls master's pair of eyes was sinister and eerie. His glance sent chills down one's back. Once arrived at the end of a bridge, it is natural to go straight. Just watch the change. Nangong Liuyun seemed to have no intention of doing so, but he had already examined the entire Hell Palace Hall down to the smallest detail since earlier. Chapter 1161. Unexpected 11. Everywhere in this Hell Palace Hall gave off a strangeness. Even he was unable to see through it clearly. After the 9 different palace halls master left, a strange quietness was once again restored indoors. In the center of the Hell Palace Hall, suddenly, a huge stone stage emerged. The 2 people across from them that were sturdy as towers directly jumped onto the stone stage. They stood, one on the left, one on the right, and then beckoned Luo Haochen and Luo Jie with their fingers. The Asura's Purgatory was about to begin. However, everyone discovered that the damn 9 different palace halls master still hadn't explained to them what was called Asura's Purgatory. There was nothing to be done. Everyone could only quietly watch the changes. Although Luo Haochen was somewhat nervous, however, matters had already arrived to this point, so he had no other choice. He could only brace himself and go up. Luo Jie, dilly-dallying, didn't want to go up, but ultimately, was still pushed up by Li Yaoyao. Luo Jie assumed a lovely pitiful appearance, aiming for the sympathy of that iron tower-like man across from her, trying to make him let her go. However, Luo Jie didn't know that these iron tower-like men were completely under the control of the 9 different palace halls master. They were merely human-shaped battle puppets. Therefore, even if Luo Jie's tears flowed until they dried up or threw flirtatious glances until her eyes cramped, it would all be usefulness. This elder brother, may I ask? Luo Jie weakly asked. However, without waiting for her to finish asking her question, that iron tower-like strong man directly lifted up both hands. He lifted up the thin and weak Luo Jie with his hands and held her up high. This unforeseen event that suddenly occurred made Luo Jie completely lifeless. Her reaction was considered fast. She suddenly flipped out a dagger from her sleeves. Her hand carrying the dagger directly stabbed towards the iron tower-like strong man's wrist. Cutting the vein on the wrist, if it was cut, the main artery's blood would then violently rush out. What Luo Jie thought up was actually a good plan. However, the facts were extremely far from what she imagined. Luo Jie really cut the iron tower-like strong man's wrist, but don't know what's going on with the skin on his arm. Its defense was extremely abnormal. Even though Luo Jie condensed all her spirit strength on that dagger, it still couldn't break through his defense. Die. The iron tower-like strong man indifferently declared Luo Jie's death. One only saw him lift Luo Jie up high without the slightest tenderness, and then heavily throw her forward. Over there was the very hard wall made of deep-sea black iron. Luo Jie's dainty body was directly tossed out. With a bang sound, she heavily smashed onto that wall made of deep-sea black iron. The time between was very fast, so quick that everyone didn't have enough time to react. Everyone only saw a blur before their eyes and Luo Jie had hit the wall. No one had expected this iron tower-like strong man's arm strength would actually be this astonishing. Luo Jie was directly half embedded into that wall. She couldn't fall down nor stand up. There was a kind of strange quietness all around. Li Yaoyao's position was very close to the place Luo Jie got thrown to. She, filled with questions, tensely took 2 steps and quickly walked to Luo Jie's side. However, Luo Jie was embedded in the wall just like that, without a trace of movement. What was going on in the end? Li Yaoyao suddenly had a bad premonition in her heart. She thought for a moment, then extended her little finger to poke Luo Jie. Poked a few times, no response. At this moment, everyone's attention was all focused on that place, including Luo Haochen, who still hadn't started. What's wrong with my younger sister? Luo Haochen's voice carried a hint of trembling. Li Yaoyao, having been assigned by everyone, was helpless, and could only extend her hand to pull Luo Jie. However, with this act of hers, a huge unforeseen change suddenly occurred. Chapter 1162, Unexpected 12. One only saw Luo Jie's originally intact body suddenly completely disintegrate. A nice body unexpectedly was split into pieces of flesh, and then fell down with pop sounds. Vomit. Li Yaoyao was closest. That mincemeat with blood splashed onto her body. She immediately felt nauseous and threw up the food she ate last night. Luo Jie had died. Just in the blink of an eye, she was crushed to death by that iron tower-like strong man? For a moment, it was awfully quiet all around. Younger sister. Luo Haochen erupted in a mournful bellow and directly wanted to dash to Luo Jie's location. However, without waiting for him to take a step forward, one could see a vigorous energy attack his back. Luo Haochen was so angry that he almost spit out some blood. However, facts wouldn't let him be headstrong. Because these two were battle puppets, they didn't have human characteristics. They also didn't have a touch of human emotions. Luo Haochen squeezed his fists. A red color gradually appeared on his fist, emitting a ruthless ripple-like fluctuation. Bloody palm strike. Li Yaoyao cried out in surprise. Elder brother Haochen actually succeeded in cultivating bloody palm strike. Simply too amazing. Bloody palm strike was a secret not passed out of Luoyu Palace Hall. Very few people could see it. Because the people that saw the bloody palm strike was already dead. All of you guys go die. Luo Haochen's eyes were red. Red rays of light rushed forth from his murderous-looking palm. His words hadn't faded before Luo Haochen already made his move. He made hand seals single-handedly, and boundless spirit power, like a tide, rushed towards his body, with buzzing sounds in the surroundings. Very quickly Luo Haochen finished his hand seals. In midair, a massive bloody palm strike burst out with steaming murderous spirit. The severe wind from the palm strike quietly enveloping those two iron tower-like strong men. On the stage, Luo Haochen's expression was severe and bloody. Bang! The powerful bloody palm strike smashed towards one of the iron tower-like strong man. Without waiting for that person to react, his eyes turned cold. He took a step, and only his after-image remained where he was. His figure had long ago already rushed towards the other iron tower-like strong man. Before he could arrive, his red palm strike suddenly extended again. A powerful exploding spirit force suddenly shot towards this iron tower-like strong man. From Luo Haochen's perspective, with his bloody palm strike, these two iron tower-like strong men most definitely would fall down. However, outside of Luo Haochen's expectations, was that although the first bloody palm strike smashed that iron tower-like strong man head-on, he saw that his figure swayed then steadied very quickly, as if he hadn't suffered any injuries at all. As for the second iron tower-like strong man, this was even stranger. Don't just look at his body being enormous like a mountain, but his speed was astonishingly faster than Luo Haochen's. He directly slanted to the side, and was already far away, avoiding that bloody palm strike. The first Iron Tower-like strong man was angry. He came over using large strides to fight with Luo Haochen. Meanwhile, this unusually quick Iron Tower-like strong man had already quietly walked towards Luo Haochen's back. Don't know how he did it, one only saw him lift with both hands, and Luo Haochen was then picked up by him like a chick, in passing. The Iron Tower-like strong man didn't have the slightest bit of pity towards Luo Die, a female, let alone towards Luo Haochen, a male? One only saw him take the horse stance and lift Luo Haochen up high over his head with both hands. When Luo Haochen discovered his situation, it was already too late. No. Luo Haochen had a kind of very unclear premonition. The shadow of death rapidly enveloped him. Fear, uneasiness, nervousness. Countless negative feelings exploded in his mind. Chapter 1163, Asura's Purgatory 1. Don't. Luo Haochen anxiously shouted out loud. Just recalling Luo Die's crushed figure from a moment ago, Luo Haochen almost cried. However, he never expected that the Iron Tower-like strong man before him simply didn't have the slightest human feelings. He was merely a battle puppet, therefore, he was indifferent to Luo Haochen's panicked expression. He lifted him up high. Suddenly using force, he heavily threw Luo Haochen forward. Don't know if it was intentional or accidental. As the injured him hit that wall made of mysterious iron from deep sea, when Luo Haochen's body was hit, it immediately turned into meat patty. A very strong strength. Ying sucked in a cold breath. He somewhat rigidly gazed at that Iron Tower-like strong man with a blank gaze. This time, it will be difficult to deal with. He discovered that even if it was one-on-one, he completely didn't have a grasp of victory. If it was said that Ying had restraining fear in his heart, then one could only use a black pot to describe Situ Ming's complexion at this moment. Although the preceding 8 challenges were dangerous, even could be accidentally maimed, but he didn't have to worry about his life. This 9th challenge's difficulty was raised in an instant. The Luo siblings' strength wasn't bad, yet the result was that they died in succession. This made the always self-confident Situ Ming also a bit timid. Second senior brother. I'm afraid. Li Yaoyao wrapped around Situ Ming's arm, raising her palm-sized refined little face weepingly with the desire to sob, as she pitifully stared at Situ Ming. Be obedient, Yaoyao, don't be afraid, second senior brother is here. Situ Ming stroked her head in distress. His Yaoyao originally was the most favored little princess in the Jade Lake's palace. Before, where would she eat so much bitterness? This girl had never before stuck to him and relied on him like now. Thinking of this, Situ Ming's heroic feelings broke out. With a taut face, he solemnly told her, Yaoyao, after we go on stage, you just use martial arts to flee. Just hand over those 2 enemies to second senior brother. Li Yaoyao's beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Second senior brother, Yaoyao is worried about you. Situ Ming's face spread out in a smile. He smiled like an idiot. Since birth, his heart had never been so sweet before. He felt like he had lived in vain for the first half of his life. For his Yaoyao, he threw caution completely to the wind. Yaoyao, as long as you can keep on living happily, even if second senior brother dies, I will be perfectly willing. Situ Ming seriously made this firm resolution. Finished speaking, Situ Ming, pulling Li Yaoyao, firmly flew onto the battle stage. There were 2 Iron Tower-like strong men on stage. Please. Situ Ming put Li Yaoyao behind his body, lifted up his long gown to stuff a corner into his belt. Then he made a gesture of inviting those 2 Iron Tower-like strong men to fight. Those 2 strong men absolutely didn't give a damn about him. Just at this moment, a rumbling sound came from below. Li Yaoyao turned her head to look, and discovered another 2 Iron Tower-like men come up. Moreover, these 2 strong men seemed even more huge and strong. Li Yaoyao was startled, a bad premonition floating up in her heart. Second senior brother, quickly, you look over there. Just as Situ Ming returned to his senses, those additional 2 Iron Tower-like strong men came up onto the stage. With each step they took, a deep footprint would appear on the floor, at the same time giving off bursts of rumbling sounds. From this, it could be seen how enormous their strength was. Situ Ming's heart was greatly alarmed. What's going on? Obviously, it was 2 against 2. Why did 4 people from the other side suddenly come up? It was not just Situ Ming and them that was puzzled. Bei Chening was also completely at a loss. What's this all about? This is? Su Luo's heart thought of a point, but she wasn't certain. Nangong Luyan glanced at Bei Chening with sympathy and faintly said 2 words. Asura's Purgatory. Chapter 1164. Asura's Purgatory 2. Asura's Purgatory, what do you mean? Although Bei Chening had also guessed a little, but he didn't dare think deeper about it. Because if that notion was really true, then it was simply too despairing to contemplate. In fact, you have already guessed it. Nangong Luyan slowly sighed. No way, right. Bei Chening was so scared that his butt sat on the ground, his voice carrying a trace of trembling. It really is a tag match? Ziyan discovered that both of their complexions weren't good and asked in puzzlement. What are you guys talking about? Su Luo gloomily looked at her. Asura's Purgatory meaning is precisely, the first group Luo Haochen and them lost, therefore, the 2 people on the other side join the second group, and so on. Ziyan's complexion turned pale in a flash, her hand that grabbed Su Luo's sleeve trembled somewhat. Your word's meaning is, if Li Yaorao and them also die, then when we go on stage we will face 6 Iron Tower-like strong men? Su Luo sadly nodded her head. Nangong Luyan and I are last. What she hadn't said was, if the preceding 6 people lost completely, then the 2 of them would face 8 Iron Tower-like strong men. Moreover, the preceding 6 Iron Tower-like strong men were clearly above the 9th rank, whereas the remaining Iron Tower-like strong men were all above the 10th rank. Even if it was 1 against 1, Nangong Luyan would still be under a lot of strain, let alone to say being swarmed by them. What is to be done? Ziyan was so anxious that she ran around in circles. If we cannot fight in sequential order, group after group, then we might as well go up together. Su Luo speechlessly looked at Ziyan, who was so anxious as to be flying around like a headless housefly. If it was before, then fine. But after the 9 different palace halls master had set the rules, then to break it. Under the 9 different palace halls master's anger, they would all be obliterated. Just a thought from him could completely wipe them out. Ziyan found that being anxious was also useless, thus, she turned her attention to the stage. At this moment, Situ Ming had already heard Su Luo's and their conversation, but this dialogue made his heart sink down, little by little, finally falling into an abyss. Second senior brother. Seeing the 4 Iron Tower-like strong men gather to come towards them, Li Yaoyao was so anxious that she almost cried. Situ Ming was also anxious in his heart. He could barely stall 2 Iron Tower-like strong men, but 4. Second senior brother, hurry up and think of a way. Hurry up. Li Yaoyao almost collapsed. Situ Ming tightly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was already an unwavering determination in them. Situ Ming tightly held Li Yaoyao's hand and gazed at her deeply. His eyes carried strong yearning and deep love. Yaoyao, when the battle starts, then quickly flee. Run as fast as you can. Li Yaoyao thought for a bit and solemnly nodded. Okay, I definitely won't burden second senior brother. Situ Ming nodded his head and gazed deeply at Li Yaoyao again. Just at this moment, the 4 Iron Tower-like strong men swarmed around and quickly surrounded the 2 people. 4 9th-ranked experts, moreover, typical examples of strong experts. How formidable must those fists be? The 4 of them simultaneously waved their fists. The air gave out a sizzling sound because of the friction. Li Yaoyao was so scared that her flowery appearance lost all color. She subconsciously lowered her figure. Thus, all the fists went towards Situ Ming. Originally they only had to deal with 2 people, but now for shining fists smashed towards Situ Ming, immediately, the pressure on him suddenly increased. Ice frost technique. Situ Ming shouted out loudly, at the critical moment tightly covering himself in a thick layer of frost. Chapter 1165. Asura's Purgatory 3. When the ice frost technique appeared, those 4 fists all smashed on that thick layer of ice. The 4 fists filled with an especially formidable strength broke through that alarmed the heavens. One could only hear an exploding sound in the air. In a flash, the thick layer of ice was cracked into fine powder. Oof! Situming's chest and back were heavily jolted. He felt a sweet flavor in his throat, and unable to keep it down, he spouted out a mouthful of blood. Second senior brother. Li Yaoyao loudly shrieked. Simultaneously, she was so scared that her flowery appearance turned pale. She didn't expect that second senior brother would actually be this weak. This was only the first round, so he was already beaten to the point of spitting out blood. Then what's to be done later? In fact, Li Yaoyao completely didn't find any fault on her own body. If she didn't act seeing an opportunity by lowering her body, Situming could have dodged 2 fists. Not like now, to stiffly resist 4 fists. Yaoyao, quickly run, second senior brother will protect you well. Situming pushed Li Yaoyao forward, throwing her far into the distance. Li Yaoyao, quick-witted in an emergency, immediately turned to get off the stage. Because off stage was the strongest third senior brother. Second senior brother simply could not protect her. Li Yaoyao's flowery appearance paled. Running as fast as flying, her afterimages quickly flashed by. However, just as Li Yaoyao's foot stepped on the battle stage's edge at this moment, an extremely strong suction force bore down on Li Yaoyao's back, just like a vacuum cleaner. It ruthlessly sucked Li Yaoyao back. It was as if Li Yaoyao was bound by a rope in midair, forming a parabolic shape. She fell backwards. No! Save me ah! Second senior brother. Third senior brother. Li Yaoyao felt her body was being pulled back at a great speed. Nangong Luyan frowned, yet stood in place as before, motionless. He completely didn't have the desire to step forward and help. However, Situming was completely the opposite. Yaoyao. Situming roared as if his heart was torn and lungs split. His facial features were furious and fiercely twisted, looking like a berserk beast. But regardless of how hard Situming tried, he was unable to get near Li Yaoyao at all, because at this moment, he was firmly being engaged by 3 iron tower-like strong men. These 3 were all 9th rank, and Situming's strength was also, at best, only at the 9th rank. Therefore, how could he possibly beat them? Now Situming was being hit by a fist from the left, then hit by another fist. He only had the strength to block and no strength to hit back. He simply couldn't save himself, let alone others. How could he still go to protect Li Yaoyao? The 3 iron tower-like strong men were battling with Situming. Then what about the one that remained? Naturally, he was playing with Li Yaoyao. That iron tower-like strong man mercilessly lifted up Li Yaoyao by 1 foot. No. No. Li Yaoyao was so scared that she directly kicked her leg. She thought of Luo Jie and also Luo Haochen. They were precisely lifted up by the leg and crushed to death. Li Yaoyao was extremely panic-stricken and struggled non-stop. But regardless of how much she resisted, in front of such a large disparity in strength, everything was futile. This iron tower-like strong man easily lifted her up, effortlessly, like lifting up a chick. No matter, this person was also rather interesting. He didn't directly toss Li Yaoyao out to be smashed like before. Rather, he single-handedly lifted her up above his head and swung her around, playing with her. Li Yaoyao, terrified, unceasingly let out intense mournful yells. This iron tower-like strong man seemed to have evil tastes. He actually felt that the intense mournful yells from Li Yaoyao were very pleasant to hear. Thus, he used Li Yaoyao as a rope to swing around in circles above his head. Second senior brother. Li Yaoyao mournfully shouted, crying until she was gasping for breath. Chapter 1166. Asura's Purgatory 4. Li Yaoyao knew, after this iron tower-like strong man was tired of toying with her, her ending would be the same as Luo Haochen and Luo Jie's. She would also be smashed into a meat patty. No, she didn't want that. Absolutely doesn't want that. Li Yaoyao was alarmed, angry and scared. Her body trembled non-stop from head to toe. Suddenly, that iron tower-like strong man felt something was wrong. Why was it raining? He lifted up his head, looking at the absolutely empty large palace hall's roof with a perplexed expression. He, unable to understand it, threw Li Yaoyao to the ground, then in astonishment, wiped his head, to discover that it really was water. Where did this water come from? The iron tower-like strong man's intellect was very low. He only had the intellect of a human at 3 to 4 years old. He put the finger that touched the water on the tip of his tongue. Pooh! The foul taste of urine directly rushed from the tip of his tongue, making people feel nauseous. Up until now, this Iron Tower-like strong man had discovered. What fucking rain, it was clearly urine. This hateful woman unexpectedly urinated on his head. Uncle can endure, but sister-in-law cannot endure. The Iron Tower-like strong man lowered his head. His gaze shot towards Li Yaoyao like lightning. Li Yaoyao was scared until her courage nearly disappeared. Tottering, she crawled up and wanted to run, however, before she could run a single step, she was ruthlessly lifted up by her hair. The Iron Tower-like strong man was really furious this time, groaning in his mouth, didn't know what he was saying. It sounded as if he was cursing. I didn't do it on purpose, it really wasn't on purpose. Li Yaoyao cried miserably. This kind of matter, where was she willing? She really was scared to the point of urinating. But this raging Iron Tower-like strong man was nevertheless completely stirred up. In a towering rage, he lifted Li Yaoyao up over his head and crouched his legs to make the horse stance. He was clearly going to smash Li Yaoyao to death. No! Second senior brother. Second senior brother. Save me. Li Yaoyao mournfully screamed like a crazy old woman. That tone was so high that it almost pierced the skies. As it turned out, facing death, the legendary Jade Lake's fairy that was above the common mortals could be scared to the point of urinating, could be scared to the point of acting like a lunatic. Situ Ming, seeing Li Yaoyao like this, both eyes cracked open with rage, but just when he was distracted, a palm strike ruthlessly smashed towards his chest. Pooh! A mouthful of blood violently rushed out of Situ Ming's mouth. Having endured the attack from all sides and violently beaten up just now, at this moment, Situ Ming's whole body was seriously hurt from top to bottom. There wasn't a place where his skin was intact. The Situ Ming that was lying on the ground knew he absolutely could not beat these 4 people. For Li Yaoyao he could do anything, even if it was to die. A strong killing intent burst out from Situ Ming's eyes. Suddenly, a dagger appeared in his hand. He ruthlessly stabbed the dagger into his own chest. Is Situ Ming committing suicide? Su Luo cried out in disbelief. No, it's a blood sacrifice. Ziyan's eyes revealed a strong sorrow and despair. Second senior brother is using a life-stealing blood sacrifice to protect Li Yaoyao. After all, they were fellow students in the same sect. Seeing Situ Ming walk to such an ending, Ziyan's eyes were filled with sadness. Life-stealing blood sacrifice? Su Luo muttered. Yes, using his own soul as a price in return for a demon's strength. You know, if a person dies without the soul being wiped out, one can go to the ghost world. But if the soul isn't even there, then one would really disappear. Ziyan's complexion was one of inexpressible grief and sadness. Although because of Li Yaoyao's matter, Ziyan didn't have a good opinion of him, however, in the end, he was still her second senior brother. At this moment, on the stage, the blood on Situ Ming's chest spread out like a blooming, pretty and flirtatious flower. Chapter 1167. Critical Moment of Life and Death. 1. Fresh bloodstains spilled down to the ground. Situ Ming's complexion was cold and concentrated, his hands unceasingly making seals. Li Yaoyao raised her head and saw Situ Ming like this. First, she was startled into almost jumping up. Then a moment later, ecstasy flashed through her eyes. Second senior brother finally displayed his blood sacrifice. She thought second senior brother was so selfish, that before, when he said could throw away his life for her, this sentence was to deceive her. Fortunately. Just when Li Yaoyao was secretly rejoicing, suddenly, she felt her body abruptly sink down. Not good. This Iron Tower-like strong man was about to throw her away. Having learned the lesson earlier from the mistakes of her predecessors, Li Yaoyao naturally wasn't so dim-witted as to be thrown out. Just when that Iron Tower-like strong man shouted "Heyo," and was about to throw her out, don't know when, the light muslin on Li Yaoyao's arm had already wrapped around the other side's wrist. Just when she was thrown out, Li Yaoyao cried out and spun in midair. However, that Iron Tower-like strong man's strength really was too formidable. Li Yaoyao spun in midair and actually directly sprained her waist. Seeing Li Yaoyao being thrown out, Situming's heart was very anxious. That final bit of ceremony was finally completed. At this moment, a strong mist of blood covered the entire stage. The smell of blood was so strong that it almost made people feel sick. The blood fluttered about everywhere like flowers, carrying a faint sweet scent. The doomed iron tower-like strong men were completely dyed in blood from head to toe. In the beginning, they hadn't put any thought to this blood mist at all, but when they tried to walk towards Situming, they discovered that their footsteps were lighter. Their cultivation actually had gradually gone backwards. Momentarily, the 4 iron tower-like strong men were completely astonished on the spot. At this moment, Situming had already pulled out the dagger from his chest. From head to foot, he looked like someone who had walked out of a sea of blood, completely soaked in blood. Especially his chest position. That wound was as large as a fist, dripping with blood and spraying out a bloody mist. Those 4 iron tower-like strongman obvious realized it was the blood on Situming's body that was making things strange. They directly abandoned Li Yaoyao and strode towards Situming to surround him. The strong blood mist sucked out more than half of the 4 iron tower-like strongmen's strength in a split second. At this moment, their remaining strength was less than 1/10 of their former strength. Yaoyao, quickly make your move. Situming, with great difficulty, opened his mouth to say, but the words were disjointed because he had lost too much blood. Li Yaoyao, at this moment, used her light muslin to wrap around the column, hugging the column and hiding in midair. Seeing Situming unceasingly calling out to her and she, having lost her mind out of fear, hurriedly shook her head. No, I can't beat them. Situming was anxious to the point of almost vomiting blood. Before, she couldn't beat them, now that he had used the blood sacrifice to weaken their cultivation. Once Li Yaoyao made her move, then she would simply finish them off with 1 fist per person. But she still continued to hide up there. Quickly, Situming felt the blood supply in his body was nearly drained dry. His face, because of anxiety, was distorted somewhat sinisterly. His entire being appeared to be very frightening. No. Li Yaoyao hugged the column. No matter what, she wasn't willing to come down. Situming only felt that he was seeing stars. A vast darkness spread out before his eyes. Just now, with the blood sacrifice, he had targeted the 4 iron tower-like strong men. Li Yaoyao's strength wouldn't have the slightest effect from the blood sacrifice. But this idiot! If she came down now to dispose of these 4 people, he still had a ghost of a chance to survive. If she still didn't come down, he really would die. Situming was as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof, but because now he had lost too much blood, with a pale complexion and cold sweat directly flowing down, his whole body was stiff like stone. Chapter 1168. Critical moment of life and death too. Quickly. Situming burst out with a final roar. Opportunity only knocks once. This was the last chance. No, second senior brother. You said you would give up your life for me. How could you trick me into coming down to die for you? I won't. I don't want to. Li Yaoyao continuously shook her head out of fear. She had a smattering knowledge of blood sacrifice. She knew that blood sacrifice was extremely strong. It was able to kill an enemy that was much stronger than her. But she didn't want to go down to take the risk. Situming looked at Li Yaoyao's appearance of firmly shaking her head. At this moment, his hot-blooded heart gradually fell to an all-time low, sinking into the abyss. He could give up his own life for her. She only needed to come down and wave her fists a little to kill the enemies, but she was too afraid to try. At this moment, Situming completely gave up all hope. Heavens, all these years, the one his heart had adored and cherished endlessly turned out to be this kind of woman? At this moment of life and death, Situming was able to truly and clearly see her real face. She was this kind of selfish, cowardly and petty person. As long as she came down to just move her hand, they could win this battle. He might not necessarily die. Situming's eyes held the last bit of hope. He looked at Li Yaoyao with pleading eyes. Yaoyao, come down. I beg you to come down. His voice was soft and very faint, but each of his words were dripping with blood. It simply would move anyone who heard it. If she didn't come down and waited after he died, the blood sacrifice would wear off, then she would die too. But Li Yaoyao still clung tightly to the column. shaking her head violently and persistently. No, no, second senior brother. You mustn't be this selfish, you must not. I'm selfish? Chuckles, I'm selfish. Situming looked at her with sorrow and despair. He used his life to protect her. How could she be this kind woman? How could it be like this? At this moment, Situming realized how thoroughly stupid he had been his whole life. All these years he had lived like a dog. No, even a dog was much smarter than him. The 4 iron tower-like strong men finally reached Situming's side with great difficulty. The 4 of them formed a square, encircling him within. They lifted their right fists at the same time. Rumbling, strong palm force smashed into Situming's body. Indeed, they only had 1/10 of their strength left, but Situming's body was already very weak. Therefore, when the 4 fists smashed down heavily, Situming's chest, back and bones were smashed to pieces. Situming's body swayed and staggered. At death's door, his pair of eyes stared fixedly at Li Yaoyao, who was holding on to the column. The expression in his eyes was very complicated. Bang! The 4 iron tower-like strong men once again struck out at the same time, hitting Situming's body again with formidable strength. Situming swayed, his body instantly falling on his back. Bang! His body heavily fell backwards, the back of his head hit the white marble floor plate. That knock splattered blood everywhere. And now, Situming was smashed until his breathing was directly cut off. Cultivation at the 9th rank on this continent, except for those old codgers who didn't come out, he could already proclaim himself king and become an overlord. It's only a pity that a strong expert from this generation just unfathomably died like this in the 9th challenge of the 9 different palace halls. And he didn't have to die. For a moment, there was a strange quiet in the surroundings. Off the stage, Su Luo and the others watched helplessly as Situming died. Second senior brother just died like this. Ziyan eye sockets were red. Her voice had a trace of choking back sobs. Su Luo said. He was able to see Li Yaoyao's true colors before his death. It could also be considered a worthy death. Also, in their minds, there wasn't the word losing, there was only fight to the end until death ends it. These 8 words. The 4 iron tower-like strong men exchanged a look, then neatly extended their right hands simultaneously. Bang! For right fists heavily smashed the column. Even if the column was made of the mysterious iron in the deep sea, it couldn't withstand the full strength of their simultaneous attack. The column swayed, and Li Yaoyao burst out in a sharp blood-curdling scream. Su Luo frowned. Why does it feel like the 4 iron tower-like strong men's strength recovered a little? Nangong Luyan frowned too. Yes, the effect of the blood sacrifice is gradually fading. Su Luo glared at Li Yaoyao unhappily. If she came down now, Li Yaoyao could still win, but following the gradual passing of time, her chances to win would gradually become less, up till she died. Tell this to her. Su Luo said, for lack of a better option. It's not because she wanted to save Li Yaoyao, rather, she didn't want to waste the purpose of the blood sacrifice Situming had used his life to exchange for. If Li Yaoyao died, the 4 iron tower-like strong men would have their strength restored. Then Ziyan's team would certainly meet a tragic end. Li Yaoyao, quickly get down now, you still can win. If you wait for the blood sacrifice's effect to wear out, you think you can still get away? Ziyan made a loudspeaker out of her hands and shouted loudly. Chapter 1170. Critical moment of life and death for. Although Li Yaoyao wanted to ignore Ziyan, but what she said was not without reason. Just now, she clearly felt the strength of those fists becoming stronger and stronger. Thinking about this, Li Yaoyao suddenly made up her mind. Just when the 4 feeble-minded iron tower-like strong men were about to hit the column once more, Li Yaoyao used her arms to wrap around the column, and at the same time, her body shot down like lightning. Bang! Li Yaoyao heavily stamped on the head of one of the iron tower-like strong man. She saw his head crack open, and a huge hole appear, with blood rushing out non-stop. Seeing this, Li Yaoyao was immediately shocked. She never expected that the iron tower-like strong man, who had pounded Luo Die into fine powder from before, were so weak that he couldn't withstand a single blow. Now that they had recovered a bit than before, doesn't it mean they were even weaker? Thinking of this, Li Yaoyao wished she could crush herself to death in one blow. She was really stupid. If she known earlier, she would have already jumped down to save second senior brother. The iron tower-like strong man with the cracked head swayed. Before he could steady himself, Li Yaoyao's feet quickly stomped on him heavily. The stupid and strong Iron Man didn't dodge or avoid, he was directly hit again. Now he fell on his butt, and his head was already stomped into his neck by Li Yaoyao. Therefore, the iron tower-like strong man now looked like a headless corpse, disgusting and terrifying, a horrible sight to see. Li Yaoyao used 100% of her strength in this kick. Of course, clearly knowing that the enemy was weak, how could she not continuously bully him? The other iron tower-like strong men were also wiped out clean by Li Yaoyao, one by one. Finally, Li Yaoyao's body floated down like an arriving immortal. She looked down at the corpses arrogantly. Her face was full of pride. After, she immediately got off the fighting stage. Li Yaoyao arrogantly walked to the front of Ziyan. She frowned with disgust and disdain. What bad luck, actually helping you guys take out 4 strong experts. Ziyan detested her conduct and every deed, and returned her ridicule. Li Yaoyao, second senior brother died for you. How could you just come down like this? Are you still human? Being reminded by Ziyan, Li Yaoyao finally remembered that second senior brother's body was still on the fighting stage. Just now, after she won, in order to show off in front of Su Luo, she actually forgot about this matter. Li Yaoyao hurriedly turned her head to look, but what made her incredulous was that all the corpses on the stage had disappeared completely. How could this be? That white marble stage was glowing as new, as if no fight had ever occurred. Ziyan angrily looked at Li Yaoyao. Second senior brother died for you, now even his bones are gone. Li Yaoyao, you're too heartless. Even if second senior brother is in the underworld, he absolutely will never forget you. Stop talking such nonsense to me. Li Yaoyao recalled that complicated expression in second senior brother's eyes before he died. Momentarily, her heart trembled with fear. Humph! Ziyan turned her head away, no longer paying her any heed. Li Yaoyao also didn't continue to stay arrogant. She stood silently on the side. Her expression, for a moment, was distraught. After all, no matter when she was quarreling with other people, second senior brother would always unflinchingly stand behind her, steady like a mountain. But now, he had disappeared forever. The surroundings suddenly had a strangely quiet atmosphere. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.